A lot of people assume that being a music supervisor is sitting around, smoking a joint, playing some music and saying, you need that one, you need that one, you need that one, and then off it goes. That's almost never the job. The job is ultimately you're a music storyteller. That means that you are working with the filmmakers who are creating this project to understand what they are looking to express, and then you're giving them options and how music can contribute to that. Another major change that's very recent is, I bet when you watch Netflix or any streaming platform, you have subtitles on. Right?
Yeah.
And when a song is playing, it means that the lyrics are showing up.
Yeah.
So it's not like this subtle thing where you're watching the scene and you're basically like, oh, that's interesting. They're talking about heartbreak and the scene has a subtext of heartbreak. You literally have the lyrics on the screen telling you what's there. A lot of film productions are in a spot where they're chasing or pursuing tax incentives. Serbia has been a fantastic beneficiary of this. They make filming here inexpensive because they're tax rebates. So people want to come to Serbia and be able to actually do film productions here. And I watched what was probably the most powerful hour of television I'd ever seen, the pilot of Breaking Bad. And I was in awe of it. And they brought me in and they said, well, what did you think? And I said, I think it was one of the best hours of television I've ever seen. I'm kind of speechless over it. I did not expect it to be at this level. And they said, what do you think of the music? And I said, I didn't like the music at all. And they said, really? And I said, I would literally take it all out. I don't think there's one cue I would keep. I would wipe the entire thing clean and start over.
Zdravo svima, dobrodošli u još jedan Agelast podcast. Kao i svake nedelje, pre svega hvala puno svima vama koji ste nas zapratili na našoj YouTube stranici. Ukoliko to niste uradili, kliknite to dugmence subscribe, zapratite našu stranicu, lajkujte sadržaj ukoliko vam se dopada, podelite ga dalje, također je veoma važno, i pomozite našem kanalu da raste, da ga vidi što veći broj ljudi. Hvala vam puno na tome. Također hvala vam puno ukoliko nas podržavate mesečnim donacijama na Patreonu. Pre svega podržavate naš podcast, omogućavate njegovu dugovečnost i nezavisnost, svoje vrste ste producenti podcasta na jedan način. I ukoliko vam je to zanimljivo, kliknite na link u opisu ove epizode, pogledajte malo kakav je Patreon, šta sve tu ima i da li vam ta zvuči kao neka privlačna stvar. Ukoliko ne, ukoliko možda vam je zanimljivije nekakva jednokratna donacija, to možete uraditi preko PayPala ili možda čak kriptovaluta, linkovi za sve to se nalaze u opisu ove ili bilo koje druge epizode i hvala vam puno na podršci u svakom slučaju. Pored toga, sve ovo ne bi bilo moguće uopšte da nema naših dragih partnera. Pre svega hvala našim dragim partnerima iz Volta. U pitanju je, kao što znate, sajt za kućnu dostavu. Ako možda nekim čudom ne znate ili ste prvi put na ovom kanalu, dakle Volt je sajt za kućnu dostavu koji vam osim restoranskih ponuda nudi brojne druge stvari koje zaista olakšavaju svakodnevni život. Kliknite na link u opisu epizode na Volt, idite na sajt i napravite profil na Voltu i iskoristite promo kod sa imenom našeg podcasta Agelast i ostvarite 4 puta, dakle 4 puta po $250 popusta na prve 4 poručbine. Dakle, a Volt, Agelast kod, 4 puta po $250 popusta na prve 4 poručbine, a link je u opisu ove ili bilo koje druge epizode, jer s obzirom na to su s nama zaista praktično od samog početka. Evo, ulazimo još malo u kraj 5. godine, početak 6. godine ovog podcasta. Također, želimo se zahvalimo našem dragom partneru iz Mazde. Kao što znate, Mazda, svaki put to pomenemo, ima 5 postulata koji sačinjavaju kor njihovog brenda. Jedan od tih i jedan od meni najdržih koji najčešće verovatno pominjemo je Takumi. Zato što pokušavamo neki način da ga povežemo sa nekim, svaki od tih postulata sa nekim od naših gostiju. Naši gosti su najčešće Takumi u svojim oblastima, to je inače razlog zašto su tu. Dakle, Takumi su majstori koji su ceo svoj profesionalni vek potrošili odnosno radeći jednu istu stvar, pokušavajući da je dovedu do savršenstva. Takumi je jako važna, jako veliki deo japanske kulture, a Mazda kao japanski proizvođač automobila svakako praktikuje Takumi u svom brendu. Majstori koji su minimum 10 godina ili 20 godina rada radili jednu stvar, pokušavajući da dovedu do savršenstva. S obzirom na savršenstvo nemoguće, to je onda praksa koju praktikuju celoga svog života. I takav je naš gost u sledećoj ovoj epizodi. U pitanju je čovek koji se zove Thomas Golubić. Ne znam da li ste čuli za njega, vrlo verovatno niste, ali ono što je on radio definitivno jeste. Thomas Golubić je čovek koji je poreklom sa ovih prostora, ali je rođen i odrastao u Sjedinjenim Američkim Državama i tamo se bavi nečime što se zove muzički supervizor, odnosno Muzički supervizor. I on je radio, zadužen je za muziku, ne samo za muziku, nego i za brojne elemente koji su kroz muziku važni za razvoj karaktera, za razvoj scena, kreiranje atmosfere, emocije i brojnih drugih aspekata u serijama i filmovima, o čemu ćemo govoriti. živi u Los Angelesu, tamo živi, radi i stvara, a znate ga po naslovima kao što su serije Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, Walking Dead, Six Feet Under, Silo, Poker Face i mnogi druge. Dakle, čovek koji je zadužen za neke od najkomercijalnijih naslova na svetu koje znate posljednjih 15 godina je naš sledeći gost. Thomas Golubić. Uživajte. So we can start. Thomas, welcome.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We have so many things to talk about because, first of all, your job already got us going before you arrived. Like, what the fuck is music supervisor in the film and TV shows? And I think it's kind of it's a very important job that it's quite often overlooked. And I don't know how much of an industry exists in Europe, especially in the Balkan region, comparing to the States, for example. But we're going to reach to that point later on. Let's talk about you first. So your name is Thomas. Your last name is Golubić. So you're kind of from around here, right?
Yeah, I'm from the neighborhood.
From the neighborhood, yeah. So tell us your story, man.
So my father, Stjepko Golubić, is a marine biologist. He's retired now. He's 90 years old.
Wow.
I just saw him a few days ago, which was incredible. It's interesting to see, you're the ghost of Christmas future of like what you will probably be like when you turn 90. So
Yeah.
I think I got a little view of that with him. He was born in Zagreb, Croatia, or Yugoslavia at the time. His mother was a librarian in the university. She was a polyglot. She spoke many different languages. And so she would have, in ex-Yugoslavia, we talked about this before, but you had this incredible opportunity to have many different cultures all coming to former Yugoslavia. And because she could speak many languages, many people were sent to her.
Yeah.
My father's father, Viktor Golubić, was killed in 1945, as many other of our comrades and family members have been. And his brother died the same year. So it was a family of four. He was a dentist. He was active in the Croatian Peasant Party, and he again disappeared, and eventually was shown to be dead. And they went to a family of two. So it was a family of two. It was my grandmother, who was essentially a big smoker, loved coffee, loved talking, and my father, who was this
Sounds familiar.
right,
Yeah,
exactly. And my father, who was this sort of curious kid. So he kind of grew up almost in a salon without really having a father. Okay. And he essentially raised me in a similar way. It was like an intellectual salon where he more or less waited until I was able to speak and engage with him intellectually before we really got to know each other.
Oh.
He traveled a lot. He was always in other places, other countries, all around the world. So I didn't see him very much.
As a marine biologist.
As a marine biologist and a professor. He was teaching at Boston University.
Oh, nice.
So I, in many ways, connected with him through the gifts that he would bring back. He had this very lovely habit where he would always bring back a gift from his trips. And on one of those trips, he brought the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album.
Of course. Almost every single person we talk with who's connected to music in any way, shape, or form, 90% of the stories start with Beatles.
Yes.
And of those 90%, like 50 or 60% starts with two albums, Sgt. Pepper or White Album.
Same. Those were the two for me. Those were the two for me. You nailed it. They were like my Quran. They were like my Bible. They were the thing I studied. And I really got to know. And I think I got to know him in absentia through those records, I think when especially for young boys who are looking for a father figure and don't have one, you fill it somehow. And I think I used music and my love of films and films in particular as a way of maybe finding him.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds. So that was like the initiation in the world of music and music. The music as a part of your building your character and creating your personality and growing up with it. So similar with me. One thing that I always say, everything that I do is just a compensation for the fact that I'm not a musician. I have zero talent in creating music whatsoever, singing, playing. I tried. God knows I tried. I tried hard, but I failed miserably at everything that I've tried. So I kind of did almost everything related to music, but creating music, working for festivals, working for record labels, working for music media, TV media, radio media, print media, writing reviews, organizing concerts, doing for youth cultural centers. I've done it all, but made music. So what was your journey like when it comes to the music?
Not dissimilar. My mother, they brought a piano in the house. You know, European parents, they thought like you should have a piano in the house. So we had a piano in the house. I don't, because
But you grew up where?
In Needham, Massachusetts, so just outside of Boston.
So you were born and raised...
I was born in New Haven, Connecticut, where my dad was at Yale University, and then we moved to Boston, where he went to Boston University.
So you never lived in Zagreb, Croatia?
Never lived in Zagreb.
Okay.
Always little visits, little stops. You know?
Okay.
So we had this piano in the house, which seemed like it would be a natural for me, especially loving music so much. However, I don't think that they had confidence in the language, number one, or even a sense of the judgment of like the teachers they brought in. So they brought in this teacher who was a terrible piano teacher. She was a very kind of stiff person. She was very critical. It was almost like she had an opportunity to take some of her negative energy out on the kids that she taught. And I was a pretty sensitive kid, so I didn't respond well to that, and it soured the piano for me.
Yeah.
And so I think in many ways, maybe like you, I've been dancing around music always, but never as a player, never as a creator, which at times is a problem, and at times I wish that I really did understand music theory. I mean, there are moments when I work with producers and artists where I wish I understood technically what they're doing. So instead, I think I responded to the emotional component. And the emotional component is very handy for, ultimately, for storytelling.
Yeah.
So I think in a sense, maybe it was a happy accident.
Okay, yeah, but how did it came to be? Because on the one hand, you had music going, and on the other hand, you had your love for the cinema, for cinema.
Yeah.
So in which moments those two things began merging together? Like what were the elements of the cinema that you appreciated so much, which you kind of started paying attention to regarding the music?
Well, the first moment that I remember, you know, when I really remembered and noticed that something about this relationship was unusual. You know, it's a little bit like when you fall in love, you suddenly realize like this is different than just liking somebody. Was when I was 10 years old, and there was a 10th anniversary screening of Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. And my father,
Beautiful Budana.
Yes, among many other things, but my God, that moment, you know, the brilliance of having a waltz, which is a mating ritual piece of music, with a spaceship moving into a dock. It has all of the wonderful phallic components to it. It's so Stanley Kubrick, you know. It's funny, it's smart, it's elegant, and it has an otherworldly quality to it. So I watched this film, and it was at the Nickelodeon Theater, which was in Boston, and it was a cheap theater back then. It was just plastic chairs, and this is not a short movie. It's a very long film. I was so riveted by the experience that as we went outside, I asked my dad if we could go back in and watch it again. So there was something a little bit wrong with me, and we did. We watched it a second time. And I think it was just one of those things where I just realized, this is what I love. This is this dream state, this weird poetry where I don't intellectually know what's being told to me. I don't fully understand it, but I have a sense that it's important. And I have, most importantly, a sense that somebody is a master at their craft, and they're giving me a glimpse into their soul and into their mind. I remember a friend of mine told me a while ago that Stanley Kubrick reaches your heart through your mind, and Andrei Tarkovsky reaches, you know, through your mind, through your heart. And in a sense, those two filmmakers are among the sort of poets that I feel are guiding, because I don't fully understand what they're doing. And I hope that if my work becomes really powerful in the course of time, that I'll be able to do things I don't fully understand either. And maybe that's sort of the goal, that it's not an intellectual thing, it's not a strictly emotional thing, it's something beyond that.
Yeah, there's so much symbolism, so much semiotics in their work, to to be confident enough to say like you understood everything about it.
It's impossible.
It's literally impossible,
And
especially with Tarkovsky, man.
Yes.
Yeah, especially with Tarkovsky.
And you can take what you want from it. I think that's the part which I love too.
Yeah.
It engages you as the viewer by not telling you what it's about or telling you what it's supposed to be about. It engages you to find that beauty yourself. And I think the work that's resonated the most for me that I've been fortunate enough to work with is the work that invites the audience to engage. It doesn't just blow your hair back.
Yeah.
It just says, lean in. Why is it quiet? What's about to happen?
Yeah.
Why are they doing that? Those mysteries to me are very interesting because it allows the audience to become part of the storytelling process.
Yeah, exactly. The kind of art that asks you to meet them halfway.
Yes.
Meet me halfway. I want to engage in this and open space for interpretations.
Yeah.
There's a difference between when you're a kid, you know, and when you consume culture and art, music, cinema, whatever, as a kid, there is these particular moments when you start loving something without intellectualizing it, you know, without putting context to it, without thinking about it. You just love it.
Yes.
For like the innocence, childish love towards something. And those things stuck with you your entire life.
They form you in a sense.
Yeah. So, but later on, you start tracing your steps back, then you start thinking about those things. Like, why did I like this? Why did this communicate with me? Then you put intellectualization in it back, the inside of it. For example, for me, the Space Odyssey is still one of the top 5 films I have ever seen in my life. And in the beginning, when I saw it for the first time, it was actually not maybe first time, but one of the first times ever that I started appreciating classical music. I never really understood classical music, and I never really had a context of how to understand it and where to put it. And it wasn't something that was like you listen to it on a party or whatever. You just don't do that. There's no occasions when you do it.
Right.
It's something that you usually do by yourself.
Yeah.
And I didn't really have that habit or knowledge or context for it. So this entire area of music was just, I kind of regarded it
someone else's music.
Someone else's music. This was the first time when I was like, this makes sense now. This, in a way, this makes sense. And this happened to me a couple of times over the years. For example, Terence Malick, The Tree of Life. There's this moment when they use Lacrimosa, the Zbigniew Lacrimosa. It's a perfect match. But it's an intense song. It's like it's a decision.
Yeah, it's a choice. It's a powerful choice.
It's a powerful choice, and it's like it's gonna make it or break it kind of choice. Like it's a gamble.
Which is what Terence Malick does really well. Like he has extraordinary confidence. I think one of my favorite scores by Hans Zimmer is in The Thin Red Line, which anecdotally I've heard was a very challenging project for him. Terence Malick really made him revise and revise and revise. He took, I think, Hans, who was already a veteran composer at this point, out of his comfort zone. But I think in many ways it created the best work that he'd ever done, in the sense, because it took him into an uncomfortable zone. And that idea of having a choice, a bold choice that asks the audience to submit to its will, in a sense, is a pretty powerful experience.
Exactly. And you reminded me now of one interview with Christopher Nolan regarding Interstellar. And he said that he knew what the story is going to be about the moment he heard Hans Zimmer theme music. Because when he asked him to compose a theme music, he didn't tell me what the movie is going to be about.
Right.
He just gave him hints about the character, about the atmosphere, about the epicness of the story. And with those couple of hints, he sat down one night and composed just a small section of it, just a small teasing part, and then he called him via phone and played him via phone these themes
theme.
And he told me back, and he replied, now I know what the film is about.
Yeah.
I don't know how much it's true story, but they told it, so I'm guessing it is.
It's a good anecdote either way.
It's a good anecdote either way. So music really makes a difference.
Yeah. It's funny, you reminded me of when music is tied to storytelling in a very explicit way, and I'm actually thinking of Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf, which for some reason I was absolutely enraptured with. It's a simple piece of classical music which allows you to know the character Peter, the wolf, and all the other animals, and each of them is given an instrument. And by having this very clear, and it's really made for children, it allows children to engage with the personality of music. I think for me, I suddenly was like, oh, the duck is an oboe, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, the cat has a certain, you know, sound, and I forgot what the instruments were, but it's a very powerful associative quality to it. And I think that when you are a filmmaker and you don't quite know what it is that you're telling, you have an idea. It's almost like you're trying to remember a vaguely held dream. Music can sometimes lead you down that pathway because it gives you just enough to hook into the story that you're like, oh, wow, this strange mix from major to minor chord is really the way it feels when you drop in atmosphere, or the way you feel when you think you may have lost someone, or a shift in your consciousness. So in a sense, music is able to somehow lead you towards an intellectual solution through an emotional vehicle that's operating on a frequency. So it's a weird mix of science, emotion, intellectual ideas, and then actual instruments and the sound waves that come off of them. It's an absolutely riveting piece. It's a riveting combination of elements that somehow has this power, and it's international. You know, music it's a language everywhere you go. You may not understand the words that someone speaks, but you can understand the music that they make.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing that you mentioned it, because in theory of literature, and especially analyzing poetry, there is one school of theory that says, in order to understand certain kind of poetry, you have to listen to it in the melody of a poem. Mm-hmm. But in order to listen to only melody of a poem, you must not understand the language of the poem.
You have to almost blank out the understanding of it.
The understanding of the language. Then you can listen only to the melody, to the cadence of it, to the rhythm of it, in order to get the meaning out of it.
Yeah. This is what I love about hip-hop and in other languages. When you don't understand the words that are being said, you know this is poetry. You know this means a lot to the person saying it. But the magic in many ways is how they say it, how those words pop out. Yeah. I was always fascinated by Icelandic. Is to me a language that is really great with hip-hop. Maybe one of my very favorites.
Really?
I don't know why, but there's something about Icelandic hip-hop and the melody of, and I don't understand the words. I don't speak Icelandic. But when I hear Icelandic rap, I'm just like, it's riveting. It gives me that feeling that you get when I heard, you know, New York hip hop from the early days. And you're like, this is a language that I'm not fully familiar with. Like, I you know, when I was listening to the first words of hip hop, I had to work through the poetry, as I think a lot of people did. And then I realized once you get that code, that energy, that attitude, the way the flex comes, it's one of those things where you're like, this is magical, and I want to know more. I want to go deeper.
Yeah, this happened to me with French hip hop.
Yeah,
with French hip hop, with films like Lion or maybe Taxi. Also, Taxi was one of those amazing soundtrack.
Yeah,
don't understand a word.
Yeah,
Doesn't Am, NTM, all of like Marcel Lanouille, like those songs, like crazy. I still listen to them to this day. There's even parts of the song where I can repeat verbatim without having idea what they're saying.
Right.
I've just been listening to it so much.
And you've repeated it as your own poetry.
As your own poetry. Who knows? Like misheard lyrics.
Yeah.
Who knows the way? What is the way I'm pronouncing it? What the fuck I'm saying? I have no idea.
Let's curate a record of having people rap other languages the best that they can, and then see if the language can translate it itself out.
Yeah, and then I never heard Icelandic hip hop though. I never heard Icelandic hip hop, but I heard like Korean one, and it can be really cool.
Yeah,
really cool, because it's in a way like de-automatization of listening. It makes you pay attention.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, when you pay attention, you start hearing things that you wouldn't usually hear. I'm guessing, but that's just my way of interpret the why it's so interesting to me. Yeah. But yeah, let's go back to you.
Yeah.
So your love for the cinema, and with Kubrick, with Space Odyssey, this journey in a way started, and your love for the Beatles, you know, Sgt. Pepper and White Album, just started this journey there. But what was your first steps in like professional career? I know you've been working on radio, but have you done anything before that?
No, I really stumbled into this career. Like, you know, people frequently ask me this exact question, like, or especially if people are interested. This is a field now that has a growing interest, you know. 20 plus years ago, I started doing this 25 years ago or so. I didn't know that it was a job. I truly didn't. I went to film school for 4 years, and I don't think anyone ever mentioned the word music supervisor. I don't think it was ever brought up. It was literally something that would, you know, I knew that there were movies like The Breakfast Club that were very music-centric and they were pop music-centric, but I didn't understand that somebody was selecting those songs and had to clear those songs and license those songs, and they had to be mixed into the episode. There's so much technical aspect that I wasn't aware of. So in many ways, when I went to film school, I just thought I would be a writer-director, as I think most people do. And then a lot of people slowly find their other homes, and either they become producers or they become engineers or they find different jobs within the field. I left and went into journalism, but I always loved music. I have 5 best friends from high school, 6 best friends from high school. We're still very close. We actually produce a podcast together, Deep Cuts Lost and Found. We do this every 2 weeks. And it's a way of us...
Just a second, let me write that down so we can put the link for it.
Yes, absolutely. So it's Deep Cuts Lost and Found. We're on our 3rd season now. It's essentially 6 middle-aged guys who always love music, who are always a bit competitive. And we each choose 2 songs from a different year or theme, and we share them, and then we basically talk about them, and we kind of comment on them. And a lot of times we make fun of each other, which is a big part of it too. And then we have a vote at the end for what we think is the most interesting deep cut. So it's a way of exploring what we always obsessively did anyway, you know, because we would, you know, we'd hang out, we'd find out how you're doing, and nowadays it's like, how's your wife, how are your kids, you know, how's the job, blah, blah, blah. But we'd always drift right back to, did you hear that new Cure single? And you're like, what, Cure has a new record? Like, yeah, they got a new record, and it's going to be out in 6 months.
They got a like new album coming out now.
But I heard the first single.
You heard the first single?
Yeah. Not single, first song on the album.
First song on the album.
It's real. If you like the Cure, it's them kind of going into their disintegration field again in a really lovely way. It's exciting. Or Nick Cave has a new album, you know, and it's like we talk about that, and we'd be like, you know, I pulled out an old Replacements record, and it's not the one that we all listen to, and it's actually kind of great. You know, it's one of those things that's we would just share that way. So I think we always knew we were big fans of music, but you know, I grew up in New England with immigrant parents. Like, you know, art is not a realistic career path. You know, it was always like, you know, become a professor, become this, become that. But I kept on going back into film. I kept going back into dream navigation. That was somehow really speaking to me. You know, it's like when you meet people who like to get high, you realize like they like to get high because it takes them into a space that normal life doesn't. And then when you meet people who don't like to get high, you realize that they are very worried about that. That's not an enjoyable experience. Like I think of Paul McCartney versus John Lennon. Like John Lennon wanted to take acid and disappear on the other side of the planet and never come back. And Paul thought, oh, well, no, that's not, I don't want to give up what I have already. It's the 2 different ways of viewing the world. I was always on the other category, as I was always like, how deep can I go? Where can I disappear to? And for me, films in particular, and later television, because I think television changed in many ways in my lifetime.
Talk about it, in our lifetime,
100%. And I think that process of allowing me to disappear into another world, to really feel emotionally and channel sometimes emotions I couldn't express to my family, to my friends. I could express them somehow through these art experiences. And I think that is sort of what drew me in many ways.
Yeah, this thing happens to me with music, with literature, and with films, of course. When you have an artist, an author, who somehow manages to clearly articulate something that's been bothering you for a long time, and you couldn't pinpoint exactly what it is. You know, you wake up fucked up, you go to sleep anxious or whatever. You don't really understand what's going on with you, and then you look at a good piece of art.
And then it's like, that's the itch that I couldn't scratch.
Yeah, exactly. And that happens so many times in my life. It's just an amazing process to witness.
I think also with paintings, I think this was one of the things that I really appreciate about my father was when we would travel quite a bit when we were together in those moments, we would always go to a museum and we'd always go to churches. You know, he would always, or temples. He would always take us to religious institutions that had history, and he would always take us to museums. And it was a way of seeing how history operates and how artists captured their moment in time. You know, what was it like to be in the 1920s in Berlin? What was it like to be in France in 1750? You know, what was it like to capture these things? And who were the artists in that time period that were able to capture it? It also taught me about frames. What do you choose to have in a frame? You know, it's a really interesting dynamic. I had a really interesting conversation on this trip. We were in Šibenik, and Šibenik has these incredible faces that are all around the church. And I didn't realize this. They were essentially the people that had paid for the church or had paid for fixing of the church. So it's really the wealthy people, and their faces would be put into the bust around there. But I remember when my father walked through, he said, you can see the history of the invasions of the Balkans from the faces on the church. Here's where it was Asiatic. Here's where it was coming from Italy. Here's where it was coming from Greece, from Turkey. You could see in the expressions in the faces who were the dominant cultures in that time period. So in a sense, art freezes time in a really interesting way, and it gives you a pathway, the breadcrumbs to understanding culture and history.
Yeah. So you told me you worked as a journalist too. So what did you do as a journalist, and where?
I went to film school, but I was always interested in journalism. And I wrote some papers about former Yugoslavia way back in 1990. And it was, you know, it was already bubbling. I think everybody who was aware, and I was probably, 20 years old, roughly at that age, 19, 20. If you were reading a lot, you could see that there was something happening. And this was, you know, again, the Berlin Wall had fallen. There was this change happening throughout Europe. And in many ways, each regime was trying to figure out how they would either continue or how they would navigate out. And it became clear that the formation of Yugoslavia, which is pretty much incredible, almost miraculous merging of cultures, was coming to a turning point, you know. So anyway, long story short, I ended up going to Croatia. I went to Ij, you know, to the island as a summer trip with my brother, very innocently. I knew that I might stay because I had a sense that something was going to happen, but my brother didn't, and my brother went back in end of August, essentially, and I stayed. And I did some work for the Foreign Press Bureau, which was basically based in Zagreb at the time, and did some what's called stringer work, basically like work for different news organizations. My name was never on anything. I just would send these little things out. And it was just a very weird and interesting experience. And then when I came back in March of '92, I went to New York, and I started to see if there was interest in Yugoslavia, because at that point, the war was beginning to shift from Croatia over to Bosnia. Yeah. And I became very disheartened, I think, because I felt like there should have been curiosity. There should have been a sense that this is a crash that's about to get worse and terrible, and that we should all be aware of it. And it felt like everybody already had their own opinions. They just wanted me to either reinforce their existing opinions, or I clearly didn't know what I was talking about, and then it had to be a confrontation. So I became a bit disheartened by all of it, and really decided to disengage from politics in that time period. I didn't pick it up until Los Angeles many years later, where I tried to start an internet magazine, which I did, called the LA Magnet, Los Angeles Magazine on the net. You can tell it's old because I used net, not, you know, it was like internet was the word at that time. I was too early. It was like 1995.
Too early.
Too early. And I was, you know, very ambitious.
Now would be too late.
Now would be too late, exactly. So I'm always a little bit off in time. But I found this interesting thing. There was a publication called the LA Reader and the LA Village View, and they were alternative publications. So they were basically youth culture magazines, sort of like the equivalent of what Vice was in Montreal.
But you were already you already moved to LA.
I moved to LA,
and then moved to LA.
I moved to LA to write a book. So I was going to write a book about the end of the American Empire, which is such an incredibly embarrassing thing to say out loud now.
And pretentious.
Pretentious. Oh my God. I ended up.
But you were like 20-something years old, right?
But still, it's ugly, you know. And the more I read what I was writing, the more I hated what I was writing, and the more I read other people's work on the same subject, the more I really respected them, and I realized I wasn't mature enough at that point.
But that showed that you have the actual distinct element that you need to have in order, you know, like why are stupid people confident? Because in order for them to understand how what they're doing is bad, they lack a certain element. If they had a certain element, they wouldn't be as they are
True.
at the moment. So
Very true.
So you had that element to recognize. Most people don't. They start doing something, they look at it, and they admire it.
Yeah. No, I had the opposite. I hated everything that I. But the thing is, I would be stubborn. I worked really hard. I'm a very hard worker, and I'm very ambitious. So that combination of ambition and drive and this need to almost vomit out my quote-unquote important opinions on things, really just, once you look at the page, you realize, like, that's just awful. And it shows a real lack of depth, and it shows an arrogance, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't think I like that person. I don't think that person is actually right.
Yeah. So you moved to LA to write a book.
I wrote, yes, exactly. And I thought that LA is perfect, right? It's like big separation between rich and poor. It's a clash of cultures. You know, it's almost like Yugoslavia. It's like empires come in and they battle within this small area. Yeah. And that was what it felt like. We had Mexican culture, and we had Anglo culture, and we had other immigrant cultures all coming in Los Angeles. And it seemed like a perfect place to write this book. And it was the Bush years, so it was kind of like, it felt like a weird Armageddon. Little did I know that we'd have Trump later, but you know, anyway.
You wish for a Bush now.
I know, God, he seemed like such a reasonable person. So yeah, I think that was it, but it was a terrible, terrible book. And I think I wrote like 350 pages.
Wow.
I mean, a lot. And I don't even know where it is. I hope it's disappeared on a drive somewhere. I literally went through at one point years later, and I thought, let me just nostalgically go through. Maybe there's some brilliant stuff I can draw from it. It was god-awful. It was god-awful. So suddenly I'm in LA. I abandoned this book, and I realized I'm stuck now. I don't have any money. I'm in a pretty expensive city, and I don't know what the hell I want to do. And I wanted to do films, but I want to do films like in New York, Jim Jarmusch style. I didn't want to do it in LA. That seemed like, you know, sellout. Little did I know where I was going to be going. So I ended up driving around Los Angeles, and I listened to a radio station called KCRW, which was a public radio station. And they had this incredible spoken word artist named Joe Frank. And Joe Frank would write these surreal. I think Joe Frank in many ways would really, I think, resonate with people from former Yugoslavia, because he has an absurdist sensibility. He has this beautiful, rich, deep voice. He would create these essentially little stories. It'd be like, and it would be in first person sometimes. He's like, I'm walking through a battlefield. There's bodies everywhere. And out there, I see a flower growing. And behind the flower is a little girl, and she hands me the flower. She picks it from the earth. And when she does, blood gushes from the earth, and she hugs me, and I have to hold her above the water. And he would just go on. And you don't know where it's going. Or there's a marionette, and it's spinning in a circle, and it's smiling and laughing at me.
Can we find this online?
Absolutely.
Can you try to find this? Because I think if we can play that, maybe it's not going to be licensed.
You know what?
Because there's no music in it.
No, well, there probably is, but it may be fine. I don't know.
I don't know.
Joe Frank. Joe Frank, and you just look up Joe Frank and, you know, spoken word artist.
Yeah.
I found him riveting, absolutely riveting. And this was at 11 a.m. on Sundays. So when a lot of people are going to church, you have this absurdist, often obscene piece. And I thought, what is this radio station that is playing this, you know? So I listened to other shows on that. And this is in the cassette days. So I would record these on cassette, and I had a little Toyota, and I would basically pop in the cassette, and I would drive around at night, all night long, getting to know the city.
So we're talking about late 90s.
Yes, there's no phone at this point. Everything is on maps. And I realized that the way to know LA is you understand Los Angeles through the roads and through the neighborhoods. It's many cities all in one. And if you use the maps or if you use the phone now, you don't really get to know it because you're destination oriented. And it really is the ride. So I would get lost and I'd be like, all right, I'm deep in East LA. It's really barren here, but there's a taco stand over there. Let me pull over, and you walk up to the taco stand, you pick up a taco, and then you kind of let you know where you are, and then you go wandering off further. And that was how I got to know LA. And I fell in love with Los Angeles. I fell head over heels in love with it. I suddenly was discovering this creature that was like never making it easy for me to find it, that was always changing and evolving. There were so many different cultures there. So I started to volunteer at this radio station. I did my internet magazine. It was a total disaster.
How did you get in contact with them? You physically, like, you knocked on the door? Or
no, it was actually so random. They little announcement. I listened to the show, and they said, we're going to go online. We're going to have an online, version of our radio station, and we're looking for volunteers. And I thought, okay, I had started an internet magazine. I had borrowed a ton of money. I had ended up breaking up with my girlfriend. She took the cats. I was living in like the living room of a guy I vaguely remembered from college who was nice enough to say, you can, let's split the rent. You can live in the living room. I'll be in the bedroom. So I was at a low point, and they just said, hey, we're looking for volunteers. And I thought, okay, well, I fucked this up pretty well, so maybe I can help them not do the same. So I came in and I said, hey, I started this internet magazine, the LA Magnet. They're like, never heard of it. I'm like, yeah, that's a problem, isn't it? And so let's see if I can help you. So I started to help and consult a little bit. And at some point they said, oh, you seem to really like this stuff. We have a volunteer position in the music library. It's on Tuesdays from 1 p.m. until 3 p.m. And you're basically just going to get CDs in, type them into a little system, print a sticker on it, stick it on the wall, and you're filling in our library. And you want to do it? And I was like, absolutely, 100%. And what was great was I was there with a guy named Gary Calamar. Gary was the librarian there. Okay. And Gary and I would essentially just flirt with girls and have fun and try to make each other laugh. It was like we became buddies. And it was my favorite thing in the world. And at some point, when I kept them coming in every Tuesday, I started playing music. If none of the DJs were playing music in the library, I would just start playing stuff. So I would go through the African section, and I would go through like, okay, today is Ghana. So I would just pull all the CDs I could find from Ghana, and I would listen to them and try to find them. And I would use the studios. So they'd be like, okay, you can go in the studios, but only between 9 and 11 when someone's doing the radio show. So I would sit there and I would listen to music upon music upon music. Loved this stuff. Somebody heard me playing stuff and said, hey, would you ever want to put a demo together? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. And I'd already listened to the show so often. I knew the DJs. I knew the world and the sort of aesthetic. So I put a demo together. Chris Dries was the guy who essentially invited me to do it. And he said, I like it. You're on 2 a.m. to 5 a.m., Saturday night to Sunday morning. Do you want to do it? And I was like, 100%.
Night slots.
Night slots.
Best slots.
Best.
When you're a young guy, nice
perfect.
slots.
Perfect. And I'm broke. I don't have any
And
money.
was it a contact? Was there like a phone that people can call?
Oh, 100%.
During night, that's the best radio ever.
It's the best. And what was really fun is at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night, people are high on drugs and they're calling you. And they're in LA. And they don't have like any idea where they are. And you're talking them down like it. And it's not live on the air. I talk to them between the songs. So I'm like, I have 3 minutes and 20 seconds left in this song. I'd be like,
but you never put them on air.
No, unfortunately. That was not part of the deal.
Yeah.
We have a lot of language issues, and it's a public radio station. And when people do drugs, they tend to say things they're not supposed to. So I don't want to like give the location of a guy who's driving around on drugs on the air. It's a bad idea. But I would chat with these people, and they were riveting. Like they'd be excited by the music. They would be talking about stuff. Sometimes they were lonely. Like I talked to people who were just like they were in a bad spot, and the music spoke to them, and I seemed like a human being, and they would reach out. It's a powerful thing. By the time I got to 5 a.m., it was church ladies going to church. And so I started to move from probably dance music, hip hop, rock and roll, and I'd be playing at the end part, soul, moving into gospel, and then I'd have gospel songs at the very end. Exactly.
But have you met Joe Frank?
Oh, yes. I worked for him. It was great. He liked what I did at some point, and he said, oh, you ever want to put some mixes together for me? I would like that.
So was he kind of a character you imagine him to be?
Oh, he was incredible. He passed away recently, but he's one of the mentors in my life, I think. Yeah. He loved women, so he always had some much younger woman who was always kind of making his life crazy. There were always these high-strung, very thoughtful, very smart, but completely insane women that were exhausting. I would see him I would be sitting in the room trying to prep his shows, right? Basically I would put music beds together that he could talk over. And I was good at finding interesting, sophisticated world music that would help to kind of give you a texture and a feeling that he could talk on top of, always instrumental. But while I'm doing this, I'm seeing him and this very pretty woman yelling at each other back and forth, but I can't hear anything. I just see them going back, and he's like, and then he'd come back in, I'm so sorry about that. And I'd be like, don't worry about it. Like, you okay? He goes,
don't worry about it. I haven't heard a thing.
He's like, well, that relationship just ended. Let's go get back to work. And it was like this cycle of this. Wow. He was a riveting person.
Have you found Joe Frank?
I don't know what it is, so here goes nothing.
Something.
Here we go. This is so exciting.
Yeah. Come on, Marco.
I bet he's on YouTube. I would imagine he's on YouTube.
Yeah, he has a channel.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think this is a subscription model. And even though he's passed away, I bet his last girlfriend probably does this stuff.
Do you hear it?
No.
It's not going your way. Sorry.
Oh, so you're listening to it by yourself. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't.
Just cue it in once you got it.
Yeah, no problem.
But I will have to stop recording to
Yeah.
cue it in, I think.
No
So
problem.
the couple of things.
Yeah.
One thing that reminded me really, their story reminded me of my beginnings in a way was when I started work. My first job was a small music TV station called TV Metropolis, and it was late 2000. And one of my first jobs over there, beside like doing Vox Populi on the streets and stuff like that, making everybody's coffee and shit like that. One of the things they made me make archives of mini DV tapes. So I would put them in those joggers, and then I would write down the time codes for everything, so they can preparing material for archive and for editing. But the other thing we did, we just got our brand new computers, and we started making this library of music. And you had to put tags on music, like name of the artist, name of the song, name of an album, year when it was published, a record label, and then you would put tags like what kind of music, music genre. You would put like the atmosphere of it. Like if you make like night playlists, and so when somebody wants to put like, I don't know, lighthearted music, some morning music, whatever, you put those tags in it.
Fun folk,
whatever, you know. So European music and stuff like that, Beatles influence, whatever. You just listen to
mandolin.
So but you had to listen to a bunch of music. So this job kind of broadened my horizons in because I was a kid being into certain specific type of genres, and I was really dismissive of everything else, really dismissive. But this, I had to listen to it.
It's a job.
It's a job, so I had to listen to it, even though I hate it or I don't like it. But over time, it kind of softened me and eased me into different. And then all of a sudden, you have this wow effect. Listening to something, you have no idea what the fuck this is. What the fuck is this music? And then you just start digging, like, you know, going down the rabbit hole, discovering that this band is influenced by these bands. And then you all of a sudden
connect the dots.
You start connecting this, and all of a sudden it kind of circles back. Then the band you really like, they actually sampled some of their stuff. And you're like, wow, this is not an original. This evolution kind of played a huge part in who I am today. Played a huge part in who I am today. And when you spoke about Joe Frank,
I can play him now.
Yeah, you can. Let's do it. Is this? There is music behind,
This music's not mine, but that's fair.
Well, we're gonna leave this on podcast platforms if YouTube is going to
allow us.
If YouTube doesn't allow us, we're gonna leave this on podcast platforms.
I have a feeling no one's chasing it down, but we'll see. The music might be copyrighted.
But the algorithm.
I know. The robots are chasing us all down. I think
he's not.
I think you got to find another spot, unfortunately. But
After the funeral, at the age of 10, I got a job at the electricity plant. I lit the candles. Yes, they sold all the electricity they made, so they had no electricity left for their own power. But they were ashamed and took out all the windows. This way, no one would know there was no electricity in the electricity factory, and the employees could work by candlelight in peace.
When were you collaborating with him? When?
I arrived at KCRW in 1996, a year after my failed internet magazine. I got a show in 1997, probably 1998, when he was doing a show called Somewhere Out There. He invited me to contribute. And it was, it's like, this is literally an artist hero, and I really carefully dug through the system. So I was looking for music for almost all the shows, but I remember when I had a little box that I would keep that was my Joe Frank box, and that would be where I popped the CDs and I would load them in, because everything was very digital in those days. You'd have to record it onto a DAT, it was not so simple.
Digital audio tape.
Yes, exactly. And then additionally, you had, you didn't have the ability, if you took the CD out of the library, no one had access to it. So I realized the better route was to go more obscure, and I would find more ambient records or more, world music, things that I felt were usually, and I think in retrospect, a lot of it was really about religiosity in a sense. It was about trance states. It was about being put into meditative states because his voice was so distinctive and so engaging. And his stories would be very absurd. Like this little excerpt we got was pretty tame, but later on he got weirder and weirder and
gradually went into madness.
Yes,
yeah.
and his shows, he would also do interview shows where he'd have this almost radio theater style where you didn't know whether it was a documentary or if it was real. He was a very, very special artist. And I had such respect for KCRW for seeing the genius in this man and giving him a platform. And that to me is sort of the thing which I love so much about public radio and for the possibility of giving really interesting artists a platform. They gave me this show at 2 a.m. to 5, which nobody was paying attention to except for, again, people who were very high or people who were going to church, which was an interesting dichotomy.
Yeah.
And eventually, about 9 years later, I was offered the opportunity to have my own show on
So you
Tuesdays.
spent like 9 years over there.
9 years.
Wow.
Sitting in for everybody.
Not volunteering the entire 9 years,
Yes,
right?
9 years of volunteering.
9 years of
9 years of
volunteering.
volunteering.
Wow.
Yeah. And because I had no money, partly because they weren't paying me, I couldn't go back to Boston to see family a lot of times. And during the holidays, all the other DJs
So how
are
would
going
you
home.
make money?
I was doing freelance writing and graphic design. I realized that the studios needed people to help them market something weird inside their own departments. It was like I was bouncing around inside the studios. I would assist somebody for a little while. And because I didn't want a job in the industry, I wasn't looking to become a producer or a director. I was a perfect person because I was smart, I was on top of it, and I didn't care. Like, I wasn't in a spot where I was like trying to, hey, you should notice me, and why don't you give me an opportunity? I would just do the job. But I also learned a lot. So I would read all the emails. I really understood. I remember there was a movie called Bulworth, which was a film that Warren Beatty was working on, and I worked for one of the producers of that show, and of that film. And I remember reading the emails between Warren Beatty and the studio, and I really understood how they operated, where the power relationship worked, what he would demand, what he wouldn't demand. And I learned so much about Hollywood just in seeing the email correspondence.
From the snippets of like power dynamics.
Yeah. And I wouldn't copy anything. I would just read it. It would just pop into my brain. But I began to understand how the ecosystem
So you were
works.
also a trustworthy person.
I was trustworthy, yeah. And I'm a good priest.
Yeah.
Like, you give me a secret, that secret doesn't go out, you know?
Yeah.
So it was a great experience. And at the same time, I'm doing my radio show, but it wasn't really my radio show. It was a shared radio show, and it was a show that, I loved doing, but it was something that I knew it was a passion, but it wasn't really a profession. They gave me an opportunity to do a midnight to 3, which sounds so late, but for me, it was like, oh my God, I'm in prime time, It's like, I've arrived. And I created a show called The Great Escape. And this was, in a way, a perfect example of sort of where the things that you love chase you, even if you don't notice that they do. The concept was I would do an imaginary soundtrack every week of a different film. I would select the film on, let's say, the show's on Tuesday. So on Wednesday, I would select the film. And maybe it was going to be Cool Hand Luke. That would then on Wednesday night go through Cool Hand Luke and mark time code of every quote in the film that told that story or something I thought was beautiful, some little moment. Like there's a scene where Cool Hand Luke, Paul Newman's mom, is talking about how she wishes sometimes that mothers were like dogs and they would forget about their pups because they don't give them pain anymore. It's like the anguish of a mother whose son is in prison, using it as a metaphor of, I wish I was like a dog and I could just not even recognize my puppy anymore. It's not my child anymore. Oh, what a powerful moment. But it gets lost in a film that people don't watch anymore. So I would grab these little sections and then I would find music that I felt was thematically tied. Whoa. So I found some like African blues and I opened up with that song. And then I'd have a couple samples from the film. And then I would have work songs and it would be like someone would talk about going out and, riding the rails and so forth. And you would have this song that would be thematically tied. So it was like this abstract idea of this is what the film is. I'm telling you the film story, but I'm doing it with songs in between. I think it was too weird, honestly, for the show. So
it's not too. This sounds like a perfect show that I would listen to nowadays, but it's literally impossible to find something like that.
Yeah,
especially because in this day and age, the imperative of speed is something. But this is something that takes time.
Takes time and focus.
Takes
and
time
you're hearing
and focus.
dialogue, and if you're driving and you're used to hearing just music, it's like it pops out. You know what I mean? It's an acquired taste, I think.
Yeah, but it sounds perfect. Two more things about about this. The first one is the thing that also influenced me a lot was late night radio, but contact late night radio. So you would hear music that you don't usually hear, especially before internet.
Yep.
So there was a couple of ways you can find new music, like new magazines, going out to certain gathering places where this certain type of people would be there, then exchanging information, buying records. But at the time, so for example, you have to get up, to put your clothes on, put your shoes on, go to the record store, but then you're gonna spend hours in the record store because
100%.
you will go through vinyls, you put headphones on, then you listen to the music, thinking of which album am I going to buy because you don't have enough money to buy.
I have €5. Which one do I buy?
Which one do I buy?
It's like Sophie's Choice.
Yeah, and then the perfect choice would be compilations.
Yes.
Because then you could be many different artists on the same album for the same price.
100%.
Compilations were the thing at the time. So and then you should listen to, I don't know, there's this radio show Wednesday at 9 p.m. So you were running back home to catch this 9 p.m. and then you put a cassette in your deck and then you record it, and then you hate the host who speaks over the song.
Yes.
So like the worst thing would be like,
I would hit pause. I'd be like, oh, he's talking. Pause.
Yeah.
And then come back in.
But during the late night shows, you would hear music that is impossible to hear anywhere else. The craziest shit you would hear in late night, and the craziest people would call those shows. Yeah. And it was like I was late to school so often because I would fall asleep
at 3 in the morning.
3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, falling asleep because I was listening to late night radio. And one thing when you spoke about Joe Frank, have you listened to Theme Time Radio Hour?
Oh, the Bob Dylan show.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's exactly what I love. It's exactly what I love.
Yeah.
You want to describe it because it's an incredible thing.
Yeah, you tell it.
Yeah, so it's Bob Dylan's voice. I think it was scripted. So it's scripted. I don't know if he wrote the scripts, but it's his persona, 100%. And it's basically wonderful explorations of music tied to specific themes. So it's like divorce songs. And so it's like sometimes they're obvious, like the song is called Divorce Song or, blah, blah, blah. Other times it would be a very subtle and interesting approach to the theme. So Theme Time Radio Hour, it's like everyone was a different theme. So you would have drinking songs. You would have
moon songs.
Time,
women songs.
Yes.
Car songs.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like on the road. And it was great. I love that show so much. It was on satellite radio for a few years. I don't know how long. You can find them online. So I recommend to anybody who's searching, just write Bob Dylan Theme Time Radio Hour. There's downloadable versions out there.
It has like 101 episodes or something like that.
They're fantastic across the board. Like there's not one of the show. And just hearing Bob's voice, like I think Bob Dylan is one of the great treasures of certainly the United States and maybe the world,
Absolutely.
And
he got a Nobel Prize.
For a good reason. He's such a special creature, and it's such an inspiration. It took me years to understand him because I think I was turned off by his voice or turned off by the folkiness, like for whatever reason, like you mentioned that thing earlier where like you choose music and it's obviously it's in opposition to other things. Tom Petty is my dad's music, so therefore I hate Tom Petty. That's shitty music. I like, the Pixies. So and it's like it's silly. It's a dichotomy because probably the Pixies listen to Tom Petty and they probably really liked it and they were influenced by Tom Petty.
Exactly.
But you have to do the research to get back to see that. And I think with Bob Dylan, I didn't get it at first. And I was very lucky. There was a wonderful man named Jeff Rosen. And we were licensing a song. I want to say it was during 6 Feet Under. I know I'm jumping ahead in time. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, we're looking to license this song. I understand that you're the approval contact. And actually, I take it back. It was not 6 Feet Under. It was Breaking Bad. And he was a fan of the show. And suddenly I'm having this conversation with Bob Dylan's manager, and we're chatting for an hour and a half about everything. It's like this. It's like about art and culture. And he said, how well do you know Bob's music? And I said, I'll be honest with you. I don't really know it very well at all. And I said, I've always understood that I'm supposed to respect him, but I don't think I ever really did the exploration. He said, okay, no problem. What's your address? And suddenly this box arrives, and it is album after album of Bob Dylan's work. And that was, for me, one of my favorite months, was disappearing into those albums and getting a chance to get to know him as an artist each time period. When he worked with Daniel Lanois and how those albums were different than the previous records. I really got a sense of an appreciation of an artist evolving over the course of time, really speaking to the American experience in a unique way. Somebody who loves all types of music, especially African-American music, and finding a way as a white Jewish man to capture what it means to be African-American in America in really unique ways. He's just one of the great poets of our time, and I was so happy that I got that experience. And this is what's so nice when you get a chance to have a library available to you or a late night show. A spark goes off, and forever after, you're like, I want to go find out as much as I possibly can about Turkish music from 1973 to 1976, because there were all these amazing bands, and I want to know all about them. It's a joy.
And this is the curse and the gift of the algorithms now, because now it's so much easier to find, for example, like Turkish music from the 60s, and there's somebody playing like 2-hour list on the vinyl and YouTube, and you like get mesmerized by it. But also there's like a ton of shit on top of it. So
100%.
So
curation is everything.
Exactly, and curation is where we the start of this path, the path you chose, because the more time passes by, the more I realize curation is really everything. Because now when algorithm is doing curation for you, you start chasing your own tail. You start circling around the same things. It doesn't matter if it's Tizer, Spotify, iTunes, whatever it is. It's so difficult to find new music. There is probably more new music than ever before.
Agreed.
But it's so hard to find it because it doesn't fall into algorithm. And you need someone who's gonna go through all of it, not all of it, but so much of it over the week and make a selection for you. Make a selection for you, and then and if they explain why this selection, even better. Even better. And if they curate it in a way to make a story out of it, that's like a perfect. But something that used to be so ordinary, almost every radio kind of had it. Almost music TV stations kind of had it. MTV had it. Even you had playlist printed in print media. In magazines, you had like top list of songs, like theme songs, something like that. It doesn't really exist anymore. All it does, but it's difficult to find. It's really difficult to find. So you spent 9 years as a volunteer, and then you got your own show, The Great Escape.
Exactly.
You were still volunteering while doing that show. So what was the show about?
Well, that was the show that was the imaginary soundtrack show.
Imaginary soundtrack show. With the quotes from the film. Sorry. And then what happened?
I got it for 1 year, and then I got a phone call from Ruth Seymour, who was the president who passed away recently. She was that very special woman who brought Joe Frank to the air. So I think I thought that she would recognize my genius somehow, but instead she just said, you're not really part of the radio anymore. And she said, thank you very much. And she didn't even say thank you very much many times. She just said, once the door closes, it never opens again. And that was kind of it.
Wow, that's what she said?
Yeah, she basically just said like,
wow.
And I just said, well, is there a reason that I'm being let go? And she just said, no reason, but once the door closes, it doesn't open again. I was like, okay.
Wow.
My guess is at some point somebody listened to the show and was like, what the fuck are they doing at this time of the night? And like, what is this? Why is Robert Redford talking on our radio station? And why is there a weird African blues song playing afterward? And then I was like, okay, bye-bye. So I was like, okay. I learned a long time ago, like, I'm always happy when someone's
Do you have those shows?
I do. I have recordings of them.
Can you put them online?
Yeah, probably. I think it's probably owned by KCRW, so I don't know whether they would come after that. Probably not, though. I don't think anyone cares.
They don't know those songs, or those quote films. So,
how about this? If you would like to hear those shows, reach out to me through my webpage, supermusicvision.com. I'll send you a copy. I'm happy to send it over. But yes, it's. I think I was shown the door, as they say. But at this point, I was also beginning to get into music supervision. So I realized somebody had approached me from a record label and said, would you be interested in doing A&R? And A&R is essentially artist and repertoire. And the job is essentially, your job is to find new artists, sign them to the label, and then hopefully make money on them. The problem was, and I spoke to two people at the station, Chris Doritas and Jason Bentley, both who were very helpful. They had both been working at record labels and publishers, and they knew the industry more than I did. They were sort of elder mentors, as it were. And what became clear to me is that you need to have commercially oriented ears for that job to work. right? You have to like things that will make money. And if there's any one thing I can say consistently in everything that I've liked, none of them have been particularly financially, valuable. Viable. They're all artistically interesting. They're very rarely things that become popular. I don't really understand pop music. I don't respond well to it. It's not something that's very interesting to me. So I was the wrong guy
But
for
there
that
are
job.
certain people which, to their regard, the amazing talent or skill they have. They, for example, do not like pop music also. They don't respond well to it, but they can recognize it and make a business out of it.
True.
Even though privately they don't listen to
It's
it at
not
all. They
their
don't
thing.
care. They don't care at all. It's just a business model. But they can recognize it and react to it in a way.
It's a powerful skill, I think, and I think it's a very valuable one. I think for me, I just always really loved I loved the soul of the artist coming through. That was the key thing for me. I wanted to feel that artist's soul coming through somehow. And most pop music is made with a goal in mind, And I think that if you've got 15 songwriters on something, it's a little hard to say where the soul is. It's a lot of people doing excellent craftsmanship, and I really respect and admire it. But I know for me, it's a little bit like going to McDonald's, It's like, it tastes like food. It's sort of weirdly delicious and salty in the right way and fatty in the right way, but all of it feels a little bit false and off, and it's the same everywhere. So I don't really feel like I'm getting nutrients. I'm not really getting anything. I want to like have a taste of grandma's sweat. You know what I mean? I want to know that like grandma was in the back sweating, and I got a piece of her sweat, a piece of her soul in that piece of fish that came to the plate. Like I want a sense of like she learned from somebody else about spicing, and that experience was interesting because she had a new understanding of spicing that changed her. And that moment of change in her is now imbued in her cooking. And to me, the music that does that is what I love. And the music that feels like it was manufactured very well and crafted the right way, it kind of leaves me flat.
Yeah.
So it led to this really interesting situation where I was like, okay, the A&R job was not a good idea.
So you didn't do it?
Didn't do it. I knew that I would fail. I knew that I'd have the job for a little while. They'd say, oh, we have this KCRW DJ. He's got cool taste in music, blah, blah, blah. And then I would bring them no money, and I would be gone in a year, if that, So someone said, why don't you look into music supervision?
Who told you that?
God, I don't remember who it was, actually, but I remember that was a great moment. And Gary Calamar, my friend, was beginning to go in the same field. So I had my buddy from the music library also working with another music supervisor, a guy named G. Mark Roswell.
But how long did the music supervision existed as a job?
I don't know. I think it's one of those jobs that like it kind of evolved on its own. It was like, there were musicals and they would have music directors, right?
Yeah.
And those music directors would, help to hire the composer, get the lyrics together, show the dancers how to dance to those things. Like they would work with choreographers. It was so many different kind of practical jobs. I don't know whether it was a job as a music supervisor per se.
Yeah.
So I think that the job was really, it was new to me at this year, which is 1999.
Could you pinpoint like the exact time when you had like music supervision or music supervisor in the credits?
Oh my God. Probably the very first one was a wonderful documentary called Welcome Sinners, and it was about burlesque.
Wow.
And it was, of course, like everything in my life, it had to be the most difficult thing possible to start with. So it was a series of amateur dancers who were in a burlesque group called the Velvet Hammer, based in Los Angeles. They were going to have a live show at a venue called the El Rey. And at the El Rey, they would dance to these songs, and they would we'd have to clear them ahead of time because we were filming them. So in order to do the job, you have to research the rights. Now, because these were amateur burlesque dancers, they were not going after pop music that you could clear or that had a whole history license. They were going after softcore porn films from Germany from 1972. They were going after like Ukrainian folk songs because they had a background in it and they found it to be sexy. The music could not have been more obscure. And I had to somehow magically research these songs or convince the girls to dance to something different when this was all they wanted to do, which honestly is the most scary part of all, would be to talk to one of the girls and say, I'm so sorry, we can't find your Ukrainian folk song and clear it. Would you do something else? And then, they would, of course, be incredibly angry. So I decided that I would find all this music, and I dug and dug and dug, and I was able to clear these things. that was my first credit. And that was an incredible experience. Very, very difficult, but it got done. And I worked with a wonderful director named Scott Liu, who's also no longer with us, so respect Scott Liu. And then I did an underground movie called Shadow Hours, which was another difficult movie with an Israeli director, with an Israeli producer who had been best friends. I think the Israeli producer was a tech guy who'd made a lot of money, so he was helping his buddy, who was a director, make the movie. And halfway through the film, they got into a horrible fight where they were no longer speaking to each other. And the director was taken off the movie, and the producer said, okay, we're bringing in new editors. You know, Isaac's not part of the movie anymore. Now you got to work with these guys and redo it from scratch. I want everything changed. So as I was doing this, Isaac would call me late at night and say, what are they doing to my movie? They're ruining my movie. And he was like trying to get me to make sure I wouldn't ruin his movie. So it was this weird situation where I learned an incredibly valuable lesson. Don't take sides. Work towards solving problems for everybody. So I would find the best music I could find that was affordable, that was interesting and dynamic and contemporary. I used music by an artist named Atticus Ross, who later became a big composer. He works with Trent Reznor on a lot of projects. His first band was called 12 Rounds. I heard them and thought they were really interesting. And it was a lot of dark, dark underground story, right? Sort of like a Mephistophelian tale.
Oh, yeah.
Peter Weller was in it. And so I found a way to kind of bring all the music together. And then sure enough, the film got accepted at Sundance. Isaac got brought back on board. Now everybody's friends again, and everybody gets to celebrate it. The film got picked up. It got a lot of good attention. You know, it's a small indie movie. But what I learned, which was so valuable, is just fix problems. Work with everybody. Don't take sides. Don't play politics. Be the solution to things. And if you can find a way to do that in a weird world of filmmaking, especially when there's egos involved and everybody's insecure and scared, you can find a way to bring that baby to conclusion. You can bring that child to the point that they can live on their own without having to, you know, play this political game. And that was really valuable.
Yeah, so starting with music supervision in the beginning, so you haven't heard of a job, you haven't heard of that job. What did you thought this job would be before ending up to be something completely different? Not really completely different, but maybe a lot more obligations than you would think.
Would have ever expected.
Yeah, would have expected.
Yeah. What you're leading to is interesting because I think a lot of people assume that being a music supervisor is sitting around, smoking a joint, playing some music and saying, you need that one, you need that one, you need that one, and then off it goes. That's almost never the job. The job is ultimately you're a music storyteller. That means that you are working with the filmmakers who are creating this project to understand what they are looking to express, and then you're giving them options and how music can contribute to that. Sometimes when you have that conversation, and people may not know much about music, they might say, do we want score? Do we want to hire a composer for this? Do we want to use songs? Do we want to use more of one or the other? What type of composer? How much money do we have? How much time do we have? How do we hire the right person so we're doing the best job with the limited resources and time that we have? A lot of practical concerns. Is there a studio involved? Is there in television? Is there a network involved? How much pressure are they going to put on? Do they have expectations? So you have to almost, it's like walking into a room with a lot of different people and becoming sensitive to everybody's interests and their needs and being able to find a way to navigate the conversation towards practical solutions that everybody feels good about that allows you to now have inspired ideas that can help to bring that to close. Sometimes the inspired idea is presenting a series of composers and saying, here are the pluses and minuses of these different composers. Here are the parts that are key. And if you have let's say a director who really likes, he's a musician and he plays guitar and he wants to hang out, and his dream would be to hang out for 2 months every night, going to the composers and jamming until they get a song. That's a specific personality type, right?
But that's a double-edged sword, though.
Double-edged sword. But for the right person, you're going to build a relationship forever, because that means that that director and that composer could work for 20 years together. And if you pair them well, you know that that's going to be great. If you have a shy composer who likes to work by himself and he has the director coming in night after night, it's going to be a nightmare. And at some point, that relationship will break down. Now you have a new problem that you have to fix, right?
Yeah.
Replacing the composer or figuring out how to patch things up between the two of them. It's like being a therapist. So you really have to think these things through. Sometimes it's a situation where somebody has a big expensive score, they like having big orchestral things, but they don't have money for it. And then it's like, okay, how do we make it sound like a big score without having 30 instruments involved? Is there a union involved? Is there a requirement to have it be a union production? That means that every player is paid union fees and dues. That can be very expensive, but it can also bring in great players, and it can be a fantastic way of also supporting musicians who spent their lives perfecting their craft. And the unions allow them to continue to do that work. If you have the budget and it's a union project, you have to know what that means and how to do that. I worked recently on a project with Carter Burwell, who's an incredible composer. And to listen to him in the music spotting sessions, working with Greg Daniels, who was an incredible showrunner and a writer who had never really worked with music in the same way before. So letting the two of them figure out how to communicate where music should be and why, and how we were playing with the tone of comedy in a sort of military, it was called Space Force, and it had sort of a military culture. But it was very interesting in learning from Carter and how he would express where music could be and what it should do. So I learn a lot from these masters of the craft, and I take what I can from that and hopefully help to guide the next conversation, because the next composer may not have that confidence, and they may be in a situation where they don't know where the music should be, and there was no temp, meaning that there's no music to give you a roadmap. I think, very good at having a blank slate in front of me and being able to know, here's where the music can help to inform. Here's where it's subtle. Here's where it needs to pound and hit you hard. So it's kind of being able to figure out what role is all of that.
Yeah, so this is the point of the conversation where we have to be really careful, because there are two things that on surface they look similar, but they come very different. One is something that looks simple, and the other something that looks banal. Banal is not a point. Not a. We're not gonna talk about that. It's, but simple things are usually very hard to make simple.
100%.
Very hard to make simple. So music supervision on the surface looks like a simple thing to do, and when it works well, it seems effortless. It seems effortless and seamlessly blend in, and everything is done so well, and everybody's happy, and nobody is paying attention at all.
100%.
100%. Yeah. But in order to be like that, there's so many different moving parts that once you open the hood, open the lid, underneath there's so many things going on. And this is why I say that we need to be careful. For example, the way I see it. You have to work with director. You have to work with editors. You have to be during the creative process. Sometimes during the process of making scenarios. Sometimes developing a character, developing a storyline, developing atmosphere, finding a perfect soundtrack. Working with score. So, you know, to help them emphasize them, or sometimes you have to learn when not to have music.
100%.
How to exploit the silence. Sometimes you have to add to a scene. Sometimes you take from the scene. Sometimes you have to find a certain part. And then there's a business part of it. Which songs, the clearing of the song, the budget for those songs, and what I personally like the best. What I personally like the best is finding a song that's not really popular, and through this popular show makes it incredibly popular. So you kind of, so the band have you to be thankful for their career path now all of a sudden happening, and like spending 10, 15 years without having this break, and all of a sudden they have it because of this moment in this particular TV show.
The serendipity of that.
The serendipity of those moments. So there's like so many different things going on simultaneously, and you have to navigate them on the go many times.
And it's live and it's liquid. It's happening at every moment.
So let's try to to dive into this. So you started working as a music supervision. You told us with the documentary, and when you seen the film that when did well at Sundance. But the interesting thing is, so you were trying to dive into these obscure Ukrainian folk songs, and I forgot what else you mentioned, but what year was that?
The year was 1999.
1999. So the internet is not the internet of today at all.
No.
So what the process looks like? What the process looks like of finding those songs and clearing those songs at the time?
I think it's a good question. I think for Velvet Hammer, for the Welcome Sinners film, I didn't really have the luxury of replacing songs. I think I replaced a few, but it was really only because it turned out a song was a cover and it was a major, a studio would own it or something like that happened. And I would find other music from the same artist. So it was detective work, but it would be me going to, let's say, a record label and saying, we'd like to license this. And they say, okay, realize the publishing is owned by Warner Brothers or whatever the big company was. And we didn't have any money. So it was like not going to happen. However, we own 100% of this song. It's both of us. So I was like, okay, that's a good option. So I'd have maybe 3 or 4 options, present that to the girls and see if they would be up for dancing to those. And they would hopefully make a selection. As we got into the internet time period and the whole business changed and things moved to digital platforms, some of it became a lot easier because now, more people knew about licensing. So I could reach out to a company in Turkey, and a lot of times it would be a situation where they wouldn't be able to read my email and they would just ignore it. Now I'm able to translate those emails slowly but surely into the original language and send that out and explain what I do and hopefully get some sort of a contact. And maybe they would find someone who speaks English in the office and they would write back a broken English response. And I would be like, okay, this is what this is. And you slowly but surely build the trust that you can build that thing through. Over the course of the last 20 years, what's grown in extraordinary ways is the licensing community. That means there are third-party licensing companies that will represent those record labels. Let's say it's a Turkish, record label, and the publishers. Let's say it's maybe it's a national publishing company, and they'll go to them and they'll say, we would like to have a selection of music from Turkey from this time period, and we want to be able to pre-clear it, meaning that we know who owns the master, we know who owns the publishing, and we can get permission to represent that for licensing, knowing that we can push it through in the paperwork. That means I now have an in-between company. And as this whole field has grown and more people, especially as people don't sell plastic anymore, right? You don't have a $20 CD for a $1 piece of plastic. You now have a business model problem. So people need to find new ways of bringing money in. Licensing has become a focal point for them. Also, there's anecdotally moments like you just mentioned earlier. There are situations where an unknown artist is licensed in the context of a TV show, and suddenly they get a lot of attention from it. And now that we live in the social media age, it means that people can talk about it and promote it. And it's a way of really taking what could be a small thing, a little bit of money from a small TV show, to become a big thing, because now everybody is interested. You have something to talk about. You get tours based upon these things. A lot can build from that. So at that time, these in-between companies, these licensing companies, became really great resources for us, because we could now go to them and say, I'm looking for Turkish psychedelic rock from 1973 to 1976. I want female vocals, and I want it to have a little tinge of sadness to it.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing. So now I can say, I think that's the vision of what I'm looking for. And it's surprising of how much interesting music comes into you. The assumption is that they've done their vetting. They've already checked that they can license these things. They're not sending us stuff that they can't or they don't own, or they know that a big company may own the other side of it and they may not be as open to licensing it, or they don't have the infrastructure, or they don't have the record keeping. A lot of times big companies will swallow another company or an old label, but they won't keep track of it. They won't be like, I don't know who owns this. And then you reach out and they say, oh, Davor has the information, but he's on vacation. He'll be back at the end of August. And you're like, no, this is next week.
Yeah.
This is next week. So you know that you can't make that happen. So that's a change, I think, in many ways. And it allows us, in a lot of ways, to utilize these resources for music discovery in a really fun and exciting way.
Yeah. The thing that happened to me more often than not is, for example, you find music and then let's say, the original composers and artists, authors are deceased.
Yep.
They've been in dispute.
Yep.
The record label they were published is gone. It's merged with something else. Then
Yep.
this one was sold to the other one. So it changed hands many times.
Yep.
Paperwork is lost.
Yep.
The dispute is going on. And then this song kind of, those songs are kind of somewhere in the ether, somewhere in the ether, and there's nothing you can do about it.
No.
Just nothing you can do about it. But then you run into things like territory, time limits,
Yes.
stuff like that. You're like, oh my God, how much? And it turns out, if you want to put certain kind of music in whatever you do, it turns out quite often the music costs more than your film.
100%. 100%.
The music costs more than a film. This is why, like, having someone like you, someone who has a deep knowledge and deep interests, like curiosity about music, and spend entirety of his life digging and finding music all around the world. So has this nuanced sensibility and ability to find a particular song for a certain, I don't know, series or film or whatever, which would play the part as, I don't know, some other mainstream song they wanted, but it's going to be a fraction of money.
Yes.
It's going to be a fraction of money. And there's an opportunity that song is going to go mainstream after it. For example, I have an example. I don't know if you were involved in it or not. It's in Walking Dead.
Okay.
The Clutch.
The Clutch.
The Clutch. Band The Clutch.
Yes. It totally rings a bell.
There's a scene with the main... I forgot...
Third season or something like that?
Something like that. Something
Yeah.
like first 2-3 seasons. First 2 or 3. I exactly forgot the season, forgot the
Yep.
episode, I forgot the context of it.
100% know exactly what you're talking about.
Forgot the context. But there's a song, I forgot the name. Oh, I forgot. Lantern something? Just wait a second.
I think you're right, actually. That's weird. It's all coming back to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, the band was The Clutch.
Clutch, yeah.
I don't think that came from me. I think that was pitched by one of the writers, if I remember
The
correctly.
regulator.
The regulator, yes.
The Clutch, the regulator. The
Yep.
regulator. The
Yep.
regulator. Come with me and walk the longest mile.
Yeah.
That one. I heard that for the first time in Walking Dead. Now it's one of my
Favorite songs.
Favorite bands.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just dived into their discography and went to their concerts, and it's just an amazing thing. Just an amazing experience. All of a sudden, you have this band in your life, which means so much to you. You discovered them via a song, The Regulator, which appeared in one episode in The Walking Dead, first 2-3 seasons maybe.
Which is, I love this part of the job, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, I also think about actors, right? You see an actor for the first time. And what's wonderful about television is sometimes it's a small role and the actor is unknown.
Yeah.
As part of the benefit of it. And then slowly you really fall deeply in love with them. And you find that you want to now see them as much as possible.
Yeah.
Entire careers are born this way. With music, I have an opportunity at times to find something that, like for instance, I used a Croatian band at one point in Breaking Bad. And somebody had asked me a question about this before. And they're like, how did this obscure instrumental surf guitar band from Croatia end up in the show?
Which one?
It was the band called the Bambi Molesters.
Oh yeah, I know Baby
You know Baby
Molesters. Yeah, I
Molesters.
know Baby Molesters.
So-
I thought at the beginning maybe it's 7 Dead Spells, but that would be too heavy. Baby
maybe so.
Molesters, yeah.
And again, they're not like a big mainstream band by any means. They're a very unique surf rock band. But an old girlfriend of mine, Sonia Plesha, had sent me a CD with their stuff, and I loved it. I thought it was great. But it took 4 or 5 years, 6 years before that moment came. But when I was going through, I remember this vividly, I literally hit random play on my massive iTunes library, and it just landed on that song. And I was like, oh, wow, this really fits. This really captures the energy. It's almost like sometimes it's like a suit. Like you walk into a store and you try a whole bunch of outfits on. You think, okay, I know roughly my size, and you try things out, and everything's a little bit off. It's too tight in the shoulders, or it's too tight in the middle. Something feels off, and then you put it on, you're like, oh my God, I was born to have this. This is like cut to my body shape. This is crazy. I'm a weird shaped person. How did this happen? That's what I look for sometimes with music. And you never know where it's going to come from. So it's like you have to have this precious collection of music that has to be curated. That's really key. Because if I put everything into my database, that random play is not useful anymore, because I'm going to land on so many crappy things that are not really useful. But if I really select it carefully and I'm smart about how I search, I can find really wonderful things that are surprising. And that I don't know why they work, but I know that they do. I know that they may not work intellectually, but they work emotionally. And that's really what we're doing. We're doing emotional storytelling where sometimes it's a surprising choice. And then for you, a band like The Clutch, which may not be that well known, suddenly becomes one of the favorite bands because in that moment, that song fit like a glove and it gave you an insight into what makes that band special.
Yeah.
And that was a worthy investment because when you went to see them live, they were awesome.
Yeah, and the best part about it was like that particular song doesn't even fit in their regular repertoire of songs. Like they used to play it for a long time, but if you listen to their catalog, their music is quite a bit different than that particular song. But that was my entry ticket. That one was my entry ticket.
Yes, the door.
The door. Then I listened to Electric Worry song, but not talk about Clutch anymore. So, but there's also another thing that I have noticed because I've spent some time in editing rooms, doing a bunch of documentaries and stuff. And one thing I've noticed, sometimes I find those music libraries helpful.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just hate them.
Sure.
Sometimes I want to put music that I have pictured being inside. And then you run into problems with, clearing ownership and stuff like
Costs.
that, especially in this region where now things have moved forward, as you said, but
it's taking a while.
wow,
It's
10 years
slow.
ago, it was
Nothing.
just impossible task. So people would be like, why don't you put some local bands? Like, trust me, you don't want to have any conversation with local bands about using their music.
Yeah. When he starts talking to his ex-girlfriend again and they can agree on the songwriting splits, that's when we can start talking again. But that's not
and
going
with
to
their
happen.
ex-manager and with their whatever,
There's 15 people who don't talk anymore, and and they all have to agree. Good luck.
Exactly. And they usually think so highly of themselves,
Yes.
even though they made zero money on that particular song. So all of a sudden, and this is also the thing, the owners of rights, they have to recognize an opportunity.
100%. Yeah.
So maybe I'm not gonna be so harsh on you with the contracts, with the money, because maybe down the road there's gonna be a bigger prize waiting for us.
Yes.
But this is also a conversation that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And but what I realized, what I want to talk to you about, do you have these kind of dilemmas? Do you have this kind of dilemmas? Do you have these kind of problems? Sometimes I feel like I want to put this song.
Sure. Yeah.
But it doesn't fit the content.
Yeah.
But I want to jam it here. So, you have an idea of a song that you want to put, even though it's not really a perfect fit.
Right.
Have you had those moments, for example, having like oh, this is such a popular song. Oh, I'm so into this band right now. I'm so into this song right now. And it has this secretly driving you behind, some secret mechanism driving you, forcing you to put it. And once you do it, you play it and you realize it doesn't really work.
I mean, it does happen. I think that the truth is, because so often it is a director or a producer or a writer that has that favorite song, has that favorite band, knows it has to be in their show. This is my one shot. I finally wrote an episode. It's got to be in there. All of this energy, and you realize it doesn't really fit. It's not the right thing. It's not telling the story. It's a little bit like you have to be a good lover.
Yeah.
If you go in and you force your ideas upon somebody else, they're probably not going to have a very good time. If you go in quietly, gently, and you slowly convince them of an idea that may not be the one that they thought, but you draw them in out of curiosity because of a sensitivity of the situation, a unique part of it, then the lovemaking can be kind of great. And I think in many ways, I try to always treat these things as sort of like a gentle lover. I'm sensitive to the situation. I'm confident about what I'm doing, but I'm going to let you come to my idea. I'll present the idea, but I'll let you take the baby steps towards it. And then once you do, hopefully that idea will really speak for itself and it will take you to that place that you wanted to go. Intent is really everything. And I think that with music in particular, because it's so subjective, like everybody's an expert in their field and music, right?
Yeah.
So you're almost always dealing with that.
Politics,
yes,
music, sports.
100%. Everybody always is an expert in those things. So you have to view it as, okay, you're an expert in music. You know everything that's possible to know about music. I'm going to try to facilitate these ideas because I understand licensing. I understand the navigation of the clearances. But if the idea doesn't work, I will present other ideas that can get you not in love with the band, but in love with the idea of what that scene was supposed to be. what is it about those characters in that moment that's tremendously important? And if I can help tell that story, then I'm really doing my job well. And you, as a writer, will really recognize that this is a tribute to your good writing, not towards your taste in music.
Yeah.
And I think that is the tricky part of the conversation. I always think of, in many ways, it's a little bit like being a judge in a divorce with a child custody battle, right? You've got the father who says, I need to be the custodian of the children because I'm the right kind of dad, and the mom is I need to be the thing. And they both have, unflexible, there's no middle ground. You got to look at the child. The film is the child. The child is going to be like, you know what? Maybe you need to be a little bit with the father. Perhaps it's going to be on the weekdays because the father has a little bit more of an easy schedule. And on the weekends, the mother is up for doing adventures. And so the kid now has a pretty good situation between these two parents with the right kind of scheduling and timing. If we think about what the child needs, we almost always get to the right answer. It's when you choose the father or you choose the mother that you force a situation where somebody's unhappy. So in a sense, if you can find a way to keep on bringing the conversation back to the child, that means that person that says, I need to have this band in there, will slowly say, you know what, let me wait. Now that I've got, now I know that band, and I might be like, you know what, let me hold on to this. Let me see if there's another moment where that song can really be done tribute. And it may not be in your episode. It might be another one. But how exciting would it be for you to hear your favorite song in the show that you worked on, but not in the episode that you wrote? So it's a weird form of diplomacy, but it always brings it back to what is telling the story the best. Yeah. What keeps the audience engaged in the moment? When you put that song in that doesn't fit, you knock the audience out, and that's when they go to make dinner, or they go make coffee, or they disengage from the material. And now your favorite song has done two things. Number one, it stopped the audience from listening to the song because it took them out of the scene, and it took them out of the scene so they're no longer engaged in the project. So you've done two disservices by having an idea that you were not flexible on. The best filmmakers I work with are the ones that say, look, I have a bunch of favorites, and I'd love to see if these can work. Please let me know if they're affordable and practical. See if you can find homes for them throughout. And I really respect that, and I want to find homes. I'm now rooting for that moment, but I'm going to use my sensitivity towards the right timing of it. And that, to me, is the best way. So when it arrives, it feels special to them, and it wasn't forced into something that didn't fit.
Yeah, and another thing is, two different things. One is development of the characters, and the other one is development of a story. So you're gonna tell it. I'm not gonna guess, but you're gonna tell it at which point. I'm guessing it's a different points in different stages for different projects. But I want you to tell us more about it. At what point do you come in? Sometimes I'm guessing you come in during the script time for a particular reason, sometimes during the production time, sometimes in post-production. But what really depends, and how does this change your process of creating and adding to the final product? And the other one is the development of character. For example, I don't know, you have this kind of character, and I don't know, he listens to The Clash, but it doesn't really fit.
Right.
Doesn't really fit. Maybe something, I don't know, some American folk from the South would be more. But so you have to develop something that is plausible, something that makes sense, something that fits into the characterization and psychology of this particular character, and also adds value to his particular behavior, explains or possibly make an excuse for the way he's motivated to behave and to be in certain elements of the story.
It's an excellent question. As you mentioned, I think it really depends on the circumstance. I feel a little bit like I am a fireman that also does fire prevention.
Yeah.
So if you would like to make sure that your house is safe from fire, right, you bring me in really early. And you'll say, okay, here's the house that I'm trying to build. And I could say, you know what? We could put a moat around it where there's water. So if there's ever a fire, the water will flush in, and it will basically block the house from being there for fire. That's the equivalent of saying, we can put a scene in where this character sings a song from that band. It's a key moment when we get to know them. We're just getting to know them, but music tells you a lot about a character. So if we know ahead of time that in the script stage, we can put in that the character is going to sing a song, or they might sing a song to their lover over the phone.
Or hum a song.
Or hum a song, exactly. Or they might dance in a club. So they just had a fight, and then she goes and she dances to a specific song. If she dances with a very specific rhythm and even mouths the words or gives flourishes to it, it means it speaks to her. It says something more. Now there's an opportunity to be like, oh, that song speaks to her. So she just had a fight with her boyfriend, but where she really feels is this, and this song does that. Now we've done something really great. We've done our fire prevention, right? We've built it into the story that a major music point, or actually a major story and character point, is articulated with music, and we were able to film it. That means I have to, number one, select the options of the songs, discuss the character, sometimes with the actors as well, and be able to establish what is it going to be. Then I need to clear it ahead of time, right? So I need to make sure that the ownership is affordable. We know that we have to do this. We can't undo this. We can't replace it in post-production. So it means that we have to say, yes, if it's going to be $10,000 or $20,000, we know that that money will go to that. We also have to know that the actor has to know how to move to it. So we might work with a choreographer. We might choose which section. Is it the first section? Is it the later section? Do we want to spend 30 seconds watching her mulling over this incredible fight and how important this was for her, and then realize that she expresses with her body when she has pain, and she does it by disappearing into a love song? All of those are choices, and if we discuss them all and we find an interesting way of building that in, now we have a great story piece. If you hire me when you're already in post-production, that ship has sailed. There's no opportunity for that. We could have it playing in the background, but the engagement of the audience in that moment will be less. So if you bring me in, for instance, in the beginning of shooting, like I just had a meeting with somebody who's shooting right now, it means that for all of the performance pieces that they're going to have in the show, somebody else had to take care of those. That means one person had a series of ideas, and now another person has a series of ideas. So it's now a little bit less of a through line. It also means I need to now change my approach because those ideas are already in the show. Now I'm in post-production or I'm in production, and I have to now figure out how do I connect to those. That means that what used to be wide is now becoming more narrow.
Yeah.
And when studios bring me in at the very last minute, they're like, oh my God, we have to mix the episodes and we don't have any music, or we fired our composer, we need to get a new one. Now I have limited possibilities. Now all I can really do is spray water on the building, right? Because in my fire metaphor, I can't really help the building stay intact. I just have to keep the fire away from it. So it's really a question of priority. The other issue is that music supervisors are not paid well. It's one of the most frustrating things I have with the job. We work incredibly hard. We have incredibly complicated jobs, as you articulated so beautifully. All these departments you're dealing with, all these different companies you're dealing with, finding a way to get united ideas of music. And then they pay you these barely acceptable amounts, and they are always trying to short the music department. And frequently they'll say, we have this amount of money for the budget. Oh, we did a lot on special effects. Oh, it cost us a lot more to do reshoots. Now that number is getting smaller and smaller. So you end up in a situation where
sometimes it's gonna be a bigger catering than
Yes, exactly. It's not a very respected field. Yeah. So a lot of times we have to really struggle to do multiple projects at once to make even a basic living. Also, we have to hire people. So they will hire me as the music supervisor, but I'm a department. That means I have a music coordinator, I may have a music assistant, all of that from one salary, one line item, which is already low. So it creates a rather unhealthy situation. And the studios have all of the leverage in the world. Everybody wants to do this job. There's always somebody willing to do it for nothing. But the problem is you end up with a culture of a lot of bourgeois people that make money from their families, or they don't really need to earn anything, doing jobs for almost nothing and bringing the numbers down for everyone. So people like me have to kind of fight for the fees each time to get it towards fairness. So it's a tricky thing, and if you bring me late in the project, I have less work to do. I'm not hiring the composer anymore. I'm not doing the on-camera visual vocals. I'm just doing the post-production parts. But you're also getting only so much from me as well, and that means that the vision is going to be compromised. If you really want to do it right, which is what Vince Gilligan does or Ryan Johnson does, you bring me in very early. So when I get the scripts, I can be like, oh, that is that is a band that will not clear easily. You put Metallica in there. Metallica are a nightmare to clear. They're ridiculously expensive, and it's probably not going to give you what you think it's going to give you. Or you put in Rage Against the Machine, they don't clear. They just simply will not approve licenses. So that won't happen. So we have to find replacements for those. Then I can build that in ahead of time, and a good filmmaker will say, you know what? I don't think they need to sing it. Why don't we just have it in the car? Let's figure out in post. We might be surprised. It might be much shorter than we expected. So rather than having her sing the song by Metallica for crazy amounts of money that we now can't undo, we can instead have it playing in the sequence, and I can help them navigate that through. So I might say, oh, you know what? Metallica is a good model. The BPM is about 135. It's a pretty fast beat. Let's have her move to something that's at that beat. I'll create a click. She can follow that beat, and that gives me a certain window of tempo that we can match really well. So it feels closer, but isn't her mouthing the words, which means we have options in post. That's why you hire me. I will take care of figuring all of that strategy out and bringing the right composer on board and helping you deliver that piece so it feels whole and complete. And like you said, invisible. You don't see all that effort.
But the process of finding the, for example, let's say you said Metallica, so let's stick with Metallica.
Sure.
So okay, so they bring you in the process early. You make all of these adjustments, so you create a window of opportunities in post. So all of the negotiations with Metallica goes to shit.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you have to find a song that matches the energy, the atmosphere, probably the meaning or whatever. So there's so many layers of things that has to match in order to fit perfectly the way Metallica song would. But then you have to find this song.
Yeah.
Of all the songs in the world, you have to find this song. Do you have any process of finding them, or you just rely on your like immense multi-decade experience?
It's a combination. Yeah. So, for example, the first thing I would probably do, I'd be like, okay, Metallica is the model, right?
Yeah.
And I would, you can even go to Spotify and be like, similar artists, right? Metallica radio, and start going through and being like, Iron Maiden, not quite, fastball, too pop, blah, blah, blah. You kind of go through and you pick and choose the artists that you think might be close. Now you have a little bit of a framework. You might say like, okay, here's 5 bands. Let me see if I can find ones that have those ingredients, right? Another major change that's very recent is, I bet when you watch Netflix or any streaming platform, you have subtitles on. Right?
Yeah.
And when a song is playing, it means that the lyrics are showing up.
Yeah.
So it's not like this subtle thing where you're watching the scene and you're basically like, oh, that's interesting. They're talking about heartbreak and the scene has a subtext of heartbreak. You literally have the lyrics on the screen telling you what's there.
Yeah.
Which means that if it's radically wrong, it's a game changer.
People don't realize it, but it's a game changer.
100%. And you end up in this weird spot where it's like, now I like to go with the feeling first and the lyrics second. So to me, the lyrics should be the second part of the thought. But now that they're showing up as a subtitle on the screen, I almost have to really keep that in consideration as well. So now it's just gotten a little bit more narrow. So maybe what I'll do then is I'll reach out to my licensing people and say, we only have $10,000, but we're looking to do Metallica, which might be $100,000. So how do we find a way to make that work? Here are the ingredients. Here are different bands that we think are in the right world. We may be going a little bit more on the speed metal side, so that might be interesting. So we could find some indie speed metal band that's not quite a Metallica hard rock sound, but takes advantage of the speed of those songs. Here's the kind of energy or the thematics that we're looking for. Maybe we have like a supernatural theme that we're kind of touching upon. That could be interesting. And then we rely upon those companies to send us ideas that we know we can clear for $10,000 all in, and we go through those and we present them, and then we work with a music editor to take those, play them against picture where the Metallica song was, and then that interesting magic, that chemistry that happens when a song is against picture does really interesting things. Sometimes when you go back and you look at Metallica, you realize Metallica was a terrible idea. Like it was just the first idea that came to mind because they're one of those 8 bands that you know if you know hard metal bands.
Yeah.
But the truth is that they weren't going to really inform this scene, but this weird, obscure band from Seattle from 1989 did this really interesting kind of aggro, proto-metal punk song. And that really captured the character. It captured that moment, and you can only tell when it's against picture. So that's really where the magic happens.
But there's also another thing. Famous bands and famous song, they bring their own context.
Yes.
which can be difficult for the scene or for the character or for the film or series.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, you bring Metallica, you bring in this whole cultural context with that particular band, and maybe the song fits, but the band doesn't fit.
Yes.
This particular character to listen to it in a car.
Yeah.
It's off character. It's offbeat in a way.
Well, sometimes it's interesting about very famous songs, right? Because it has a certain cultural currency that adds a lot of information. So, for example, I was working on something on Better Call Saul, and we had a character who was Saul's assistant, his secretary.
Yeah.
And we put a bunch of unknown songs because she literally just drives in the parking lot. She's about to go to a job interview. She's going to work for Saul. And we wanted to have... How do we capture that this is the last happy moment in her life, right? This is the last moment that she had optimism, right? Yeah. She hasn't started working for Saul Goodman yet. She thinks she's going to leave the DMV, that shitty job that she didn't like, and go to this new job. It's going to be a great job, and we know it's not going to end well for her. If you watch Breaking Bad, you know that his secretary does not have a happy life.
Yeah.
So how do we capture that last moment of optimism? So I put a bunch of inexpensive songs. It's literally 3 seconds. The car pulls in, comes in, ends. And I was the one that pitched the idea because we could have easily had no music playing, but I thought it's really beautiful if you see that character, and with a prequel, you know where it's going.
Yeah.
So a lot of the game is how do you set up more story because you know how it's going to end. So we tried to put in unknown songs. We didn't have much money, and we thought we'll do that. And they were all interesting. It was like, okay, this is like a jingly-jangly pop song, kind of 90s era. It didn't work the way having a recognizable song did. And when that recognizable song came in, even for 5 seconds, it tells you so much.
Yeah.
You know that this is a woman who like has a shitty job, puts on happy pop music. The time period is probably the late 2000s.
Yeah.
And we found something that really just spoke to her and gave us a lot of information. And then you can almost laugh when you recognize the song, and then you know she's about to get the job with Saul Goodman and her life is about to become a big pile of shit.
Yeah.
But it's like, this now has storytelling.
So what
power.
was the song?
I forgot. I was afraid you were going to ask. I thought there would be no exams here.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it. You said Saul Goodman. So we haven't mentioned actually what you worked on. You worked on 6 Feet Under. You worked for Breaking Bad. You worked for Better Call Saul. You worked for latest shows, Poker Face,
yep.
Silo.
Yep.
I'm binge watching Silo at the moment.
Oh, it's so good.
The Silo is an interesting thing because I'm binge watching it at the moment. I knew you were coming, so I paid attention a bit to the music, and then I realized there's not much music going on in Silo.
Not much source. There's a lot of score.
A lot of score. But then I thought about something. For example, one of the artists, while you remember the story about the archive that I typed in, all those tags for for the particular artist. One of the artists that I discovered by doing that was Brian Eno.
Yes.
And it's not it's not the kind of music I would listen to privately, but when you're forced to sit down and listen,
you learn something.
You learn something very peculiar about Brian Eno. And then I realized this music could easly change score.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm guessing there are many situations when those two things overlap. When audience think it's a score,
but it's not.
But it's actually not.
Yeah.
But you have to put this seamlessly with the composers.
Yeah. It's a balancing act, One of my favorite moments in Breaking Bad was a sequence where we had Gustavo Fring, and he was about to confront Hector Salamanca. He's about to kill Hector Salamanca because he thinks that he's ratted him out to the police. And Walter has worked with Hector Salamanca to put a bomb underneath his chair. And that piece before that could easily have been score, right? It's a very powerful moment. It is literally years of simmering rage and revenge. And if you think about who Gustavo Fring is, he's a man of control. He's a man of deep intelligence, strategy. He has so much anger within him, but he keeps it all so tight. And we needed music that captured this feeling, right? And I know that Dave Porter, the composer, also created pieces for this, and I pulled music as well. Frequently in that show, we would both try to cover things. But I knew also that I didn't want to put something in there that made it into a song moment. I needed something that was connected somehow to what Dave does already, and I found a song by an artist named Apparat called Goodbye. There's a beautiful vocal that's tied to it. Soap and Skin does the vocal on it, but we ended up using the instrumental version because it was a little bit more seamless. It made it more in the score realm, and it's one of my favorite moments in the series because it takes you into his emotional state completely. You're not thinking about it of here's a needle drop, here's a song moment. It's a moment where you feel the emotion slowly building and moving towards this extraordinary conclusion. And those of you who've seen Breaking Bad know it doesn't end well for Gustavo Fring or Hector Salamanca for that matter. But it is a very powerful sequence, but it has to be done with a certain level of sincerity and respect. Sincerity to the character and respect to the environment and the culture of the music and the storytelling of how we've done before. So that's like an example where it can be in between. For Silo, as a good example, Atli Orvason, is an Icelandic composer, is the composer for that show. And we had to go through extraordinary difficulty to get him on board because he is based in Iceland, and there are tax incentives that push you to hire composers from certain areas. This has become a very common new thing. A lot of film productions are in a spot where they're chasing or pursuing tax incentives. Serbia has been a fantastic beneficiary of this. They make filming here inexpensive because they're tax rebates. So people want to come to Serbia and be able to actually do film productions here. The more film productions happen, the better the crews become, the more talented everybody becomes, the more reliable. And pretty soon you're like, yeah, we're doing scenes. They're supposed to be in Greece or they're supposed to be in Berlin, but we shot it in Serbia, and we're so happy we did because it feels like you're in Berlin. You don't feel like you're not in that city, but at the same time, we're able to afford to do it, and we're able to put more money into the scene. We could do a chase scene that we wouldn't have done otherwise, things like that. So for Silo, we had this need to hire a British composer. Atli was the right composer, partly because the director who did the first few episodes, established the tone of the series, had worked with him before, and he had anecdotally fired a whole bunch of other composers that weren't Atli. So we were like, okay, we need to get somebody he's comfortable with that we can move forward. There was a lot of world building we had done originally for the Silo. We were filling entire ideas of how music would work. The director was not really interested in that. He was very interested in score, and music was not really the focal point. So months and months of work, months and months of ideas got thrown out the window, which was, for me, absolutely heartbreaking. But I also recognized that my job is to always pivot to the situation as it is, not as I wish it to be. So I wish that there was more world building, but that's not what the show turned out to be. The show turned out to be very plot-driven, very score-driven, and the job really was to make sure that we created an environment where Atli was able to do the best storytelling, and we were able to identify what are the stories that we're telling. So my job is really to help with that, identify what story are we telling here, and does the audience know this is part of this plot, this is part of this plot, and it's not just a soup. It has different specific distinct identities.
But there's a missed opportunity in Silo that I was thinking about. Because, for example, they have this whole relics thing going on, right? So they see the paths and they don't know what it is. So, which opens up a completely new portal into like shedding light on our world from a different perspective of somebody who's outside of it.
Yes.
And this could, you can play with it in so many different ways. So imagine if they found a relic with Beatles.
Yes.
And all of a sudden they play and hear the Beatles for the first time.
Right.
The way this can create so many different, like, smaller narratives.
You're singing my song. You know, but that wasn't ultimately what the vision was. So, and if you could know all the wonderful ideas that I had built and that work, we hired a musicologist. We talked about how people misremember music. So a melody that might come from Chopin will suddenly get tied to a Cyndi Lauper pop song because they're melodically similar. And suddenly you realize, oh, they're tied to each other, but someone misremembered. And then the lyric is a patriotic song because it had to be adapted to the life in the silo. So now you have almost a folk song from the silo with the melody or the lead line of the Cyndi Lauper song, but the structure of Chopin. And you're like, what an incredible, beautiful way of telling how, especially from learned, because we don't have any technology in the silo, right? You don't have record players. There's no CD players. There's no TVs. Everyone is living a life of, it's almost like a feudal engagement. Yeah. So it was kind of like, how does the folk music build? We built all that, but it didn't end up getting used. And so it's one of those things where you're like, but you know what? You hire me as the craftsperson to build everything as much as possible. And if it turns out that it doesn't make it into the cut for one reason or another, that's okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. I did the work. I know that, you know, it's there. It's a choice, you know?
Yeah, but for Breaking Bad, for example, it's a completely different story.
Yes.
Breaking Bad is such a good show that now being 42 years old, you know, done a bunch of stuff in my life, one thing you realize, it went so much more into that show than just the budget and like hiring good people.
Yeah.
Having time, having budget and hiring good people, it goes so much more. It seems like a show where everybody gave their best.
Yes.
Everybody gave their best, and there's so much nuances. And when everybody put an effort in it, you have this symbiotic effect of creating an effect which none of these particular parts have it for itself.
Yeah.
Only when they blend together like in a good harmony.
Yes.
And I'm guessing, you know, that being music supervisor for particular episodes, for the particular seasons. I don't know how many seasons you did.
All of them. Yeah.
You did all of them.
From the beginning.
From the beginning. Oh, that's nice. So doing something like that. So I'm guessing you were part of it from the beginning. And so you had to develop all of those characters.
Yeah.
So you're like Jesse Pinkman, like Walter White. They are such a colorful, vivid, but very peculiar characters.
Yes.
So what was the process of building those characters like for you?
Well, it's Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and now this new project I'm working with Vince is to me probably my favorite projects of my lifetime. They're unique circumstances in that from the very start, you have an opportunity to be creative. You're not just hiring me, or they don't just hire me as a craftsperson. They give me the opportunity to be an artist. And I think that is something, but an artist in context, you know. I'm not here to solo. My job is to figure out how little do you need to notice me for me to contribute in an interesting way. And then you can figure out how much volume you want to put up in that moment. Yeah. Because I was involved from the very beginning, one of the things that was very interesting was I met with Vince and the team on my very first meeting with them. And because they were meeting with lots of music supervisors, most of whom had a lot more experience than I did, they had me waiting in the waiting room for a very long time. And I just watched all these much more successful music supervisors going out, smiling like, I got the job, and I got the job. And I just thought like, okay, I'm going to spend my whole afternoon here, and they're going to be polite and say, we hired somebody about an hour ago, but we thought we'd at least meet with you. I didn't expect anything of it. But they said, would you watch the episode? And so I've already been there for like an hour and a half, and I was like, sure, no problem, I'll go look at it. And I watched, which was probably the most powerful hour of television I'd ever seen, the pilot of Breaking Bad. And I was in awe of it. And they brought me in and they said, well, what did you think? And I said, I think it was one of the best hours of television I've ever seen. I'm kind of speechless over it. I did not expect it to be at this level. And they said, what do you think of the music? And I said, I didn't like the music at all. And they said, really? And I said, I would literally take it all out. Like, I don't think there's one cue I would keep. I would wipe the entire thing clean and start over. And they were like, okay, hot shot. What would you do? And I said, less music. It's wall-to-wall music. You have an incredible performance. You have an incredible story. You have a great premise. You have a really great rhythm to how you're telling that story. You know, you're establishing that he's, you know, he has cancer. You're establishing that he is disrespected at his school. You see him recognizing that even his brother-in-law, who's a bit of a bully, is basically talking down to him. And then you have that light bulb moment where you see all that money. And you think, that's the kind of money that they're making? And he knows, I have a problem. I'm going to die. I've got cancer. And I'm going to solve it with the one thing that I know that I can do, which is chemistry. And I can make that kind of money. I've now solved that problem. That's incredible storytelling in a very short period of time. And then you engage him with Jesse, and you have that entire process, that weird bromance between the two of them that gets built. All this in a 1 hour thing. But they had music from beginning to end. It was constant wall to wall. And I thought, it's a little bit like a very handsome person putting on too much makeup, you know? Yeah. And you're just like, you're so beautiful. Why are you putting on eyeliner and all of these things? You're covering up, you're overcompensating for what is already beautiful. So I would say, get rid of all the makeup. Let's start from scratch. Maybe a little bit of eyeshadow or a little bit of eyeliner, maybe, a little bit of lipstick. Let's minimize. And I think that they responded very well to that idea because it was the opposite of what everybody else had told them. All of these veteran supervisors all said, the music's amazing. I can't wait to help. It's going to be great. And they would probably replace those songs with more affordable ones that were also okay. But it would be an hour of television that would be overwhelming, and the music would be telling you in every moment how to feel. And I think what we ended up with instead, partly because we had very little money, two, because I think we realized that we were leaning into every department was doing something magical, back to what you said earlier. The choices of colors, the choices of the cars, the choices of the actors, how they carried themselves, clothing, everything was so thought through. It's not an accident that Walt starts wearing beige and ends in black. He evolves over the course of time. We would navigate how Jesse was based upon how his clothes would change, how he would carry himself.
Yeah.
When he gets his old rickety car after his sports car, it's because he's now learning to go underground and stay low-key, right? The characters are all evolving over the course of time. Skylar, you see Skylar's sort of emotional soul journey through the colors that you see in those shots, how she's framed. All of these are choices. So when I look at it, I try to look at it with great sensitivity of, okay, the writer has made certain choices. What am I drawing from that? So from the script, I'll put my notes. The directors are making certain choices. How do I frame this? If you two are talking, am I on you? Am I on you? Am I on you when he talks? And am I on you when he talks? That's an interesting choice. What can I draw from that? So by pulling all this information together, it tells me, how can I help? If the conversation is engaging between the two of you, but there's a caustic energy that neither of you want to, touch upon, maybe we have in a cafe a little bit of music in the background. You don't notice it mostly, but when there's a silence between the two of you, it pops in and it has an acrid quality to it. And now we've told in a very subtle way, without you even noticing it, that there's something ugly in this conversation, that there is a domination going on that I didn't notice until the very end when that little piece of music said, if you didn't catch it, there's something kind of ugly happening. And that's sort of what we can do. We find subtle ways of contributing and helping. And then, of course, we had these incredible montages where we'd have storytelling of like, here's a week that goes by in the process of making this meth batch. Or here's where Jesse goes from being a flunky student to a teacher because he's teaching, Badger how to make it, And it's funny and it's fun. And the songs would really help the audience feel like this is the tone. Here we're being comedic, here we're being light, here we're being darker, here we're being a bit more mysterious. And we would find these really wonderful ways of working with the editors to build these beautiful montages. It's such a joy to be able to work with a team that everybody is doing their very best work, and all you can do is screw it up. So you just try to find a way not to.
Yeah, one of the latest projects you've been also working on is something quite different, though. It's Poker Face with Natasha Lyonne, which is peculiar character also.
Yes.
Yeah. So how is that different from the work you've done previously?
Well, there's so many different things. One of the things that was most exciting when I first met with Ryan Johnson, who's another one of my favorite filmmakers, he had said, we're going to be doing a series that's kind of in the classic mystery realm. It's a 1-hour story. They're standalone stories. You can follow one story or miss an episode, and in a way, it's not a through line that you have to cover. Yeah. It's hard to miss episodes of Breaking Bad. Like, a lot will disappear. You won't know why that person has changed because something happened to them in an episode.
But there's also this situation that you have to follow continuously because if you make a pause big enough, you forget the characters.
Yes, absolutely.
You forget the plot.
Absolutely.
Because there's so many details that you have to know with each episode coming. Yeah.
And you can't really climb out. Even like Silo, you can't really climb out.
When there was, exactly. There was like some big pause in between seasons with Breaking Bad that I just had to watch like last 2 episodes of the previous season before I continue with the next one.
Because you know the story will continue. And we're not going to spoon feed you with where that thing is. With Poker Face, it was this neat opportunity because Ryan is very nostalgic for the days of like Columbo, like those shows that were a mystery of the week, right?
Yeah.
And from the beginning to the end, there's one story, one set of characters. What I loved about this structure was that we're in a different environment, different part of the country, different culture, and that show has some of my favorite casting of any shows. It's always surprising who they cast and who they bring in, and each one was a new challenge. So I knew that for episode, I want to say it was number 4, this is Chloe Sevigny is playing a sort of a washed-up rock and roll girl. She was in a rock band in the early 2000s. They had a one-hit wonder, and now she's working at a hardware store, and then she might go on tour for a little bit. The band are all like, one of them's going to a divorce, another one is trying to become a lawyer, but he's not doing a very good job of it, and they hire a new drummer who's this kind of enthusiastic kid who writes a hit song for them, and they think this has changed everything, and they decide to strategize to kill him, to steal the song, right? And it was like, okay, this is a fun episode, right? And there's a huge part of it, which is that the story was about copyright. So the premise of the entire thing is that they take the theme from Benson, which is a sitcom from the 1980s, a TV show, and that he watches that show. And we established early on that he's watching it on his iPad, right? And he's watching the show and he laughs because he finds the show funny. It's a show that many people don't remember, but it was very popular in the 80s. And he creates a interpolation of the theme song to Benson in creating this pop song that they think is going to be a big hit, but they don't know it. So they've done a huge copyright violation and they've killed the guy for it. So now we have a plot all about music, issues. So I have a whole series of problems, right?
Yeah.
Problem number 1, can we clear Benson? When we reached out to them, they were like, you want to clear the theme song from a show from the 1980s? And we're like, yes. And we want to create a new rock and roll pop song that basically is based upon that song, but has different lyrics and different feel. Okay. And then we're like, and we need to clear it in order to build this whole thing. Can you make that happen? Which started out easily enough. And then they hired the Michael Jackson's attorney to represent. And suddenly it was a whole new level of hell because now it got crazy expensive and they knew they had us over a barrel. It was a little bit like someone said, hey, I'd like to have permission to be on the land. And then you're like, oh, but we're going to bring the most expensive ticket taker and they're going to be at the front and they're going to tell you what the cost is. So absolute nightmare. And we had to hire a songwriter, John Darnell from the Mountain Goats, who appeared in the episode to help us write these songs. He is a folk artist or a sort of idiosyncratic alternative rock artist. He's not a heavy metal guy. So he smartly reached out to Jamie Jasta, who was in a band called Hatebreed, who are a Connecticut hard rock band.
I know Hatebreed,
You know
course.
Hatebreed,
Very well,
yep.
very well. Been to a couple of concerts.
It was a fantastic collaboration because they're friends and they both love hard rock, but they found a way to build these incredible songs that, number one of them has to sound like a hit song. It's got to sound like a song that was a big hit for a band and that every time that song, Staplehead, gets played, everybody in the audience like, yeah, Staplehead, it's why I'm here. I've been waiting all night for this. That was the energy we had to find. And we had to find other songs that were not good, that the band are not talented songwriters. So the songs that they try to write for themselves are terrible. So that has to be done. And we have to create the other song, which is basically this Benson ripoff that becomes a new hit. So it's like, what a ridiculous series. And then we had to do visual vocals, performances. So Chloe had to learn how to do these performances live. The whole band had to play their instruments. The drummer, God bless him, the actor who played him, who was incredible in the episode, kind of didn't tell the truth about how much, drumming experience he had. So suddenly we had to get a coach in upstate New York. So I had to fly out, find the drum coach, work with the actor to get that done. So he at least would be focusing on the performance, not on trying to look like a real drummer. Oh my God, that's just one episode. Yeah. And, so this was what the job was. It was like throwing you into the deep end of the pool. Sometimes, for instance, Ryan Johnson has a fantastic taste in music. And one of the episodes, this wonderful episode with two old ladies who are essentially in a retirement home and are former revolutionaries, and they plot to kill somebody that was a mole who got them arrested. Great story. A lot of the music that was in there was stuff that Ryan had placed in there. And he was like, okay, this is like obscure African movie from Zambia and all over the place. And he was like, I don't know if we can get this, but these are the ideas. I knew that I could throw other ideas. This is a world I'm very comfortable in. Yeah, but most importantly, I thought, let's see if we can get everything. So my job there was not to replace Ryan's ideas. My job was to clear everything, which was a glorious experience because I was so happy he got to have the stuff that he wanted in there, and I didn't have to try to convince him that things were better. He's very open. He's very collaborative, and I think he appreciates my creativity, but I know which set of skills I need to use. I'm so glad I'm doing this show at this later part of my career because I might have, at an earlier age, tried to impress Ryan with my cool taste, or I might have tried to, become buddies with the band. Instead, I became a good, smart craftsperson, collaborative, worker, and each episode I'd find a different way of helping out, a different way of building things. And Olivia Schlichting, who's my coordinator on that project, was just absolutely vital to the process. I mean, she's my right hand. And in many ways, she's the one that is able to go through so many of our music submissions and narrow them down to the ones that really work. So I really rely upon my team to be able to kind of do these jobs well.
Yeah. Does the mixing of the episode changes things from time to time? For example, when sound engineer, is mixing an episode in, and then, the moment when the song comes in, how long does it last, the fade outs, the loudness or the quietness or whatever, does that sometimes change the aspects of what were you imagining to be, and then later on being like, when you sing the final mix, being like, maybe we could do with something else?
Yeah. Yes, very much. Actually, it's a very intuitive question. I think in many ways, mixing is a little bit like the cooking. Right?
Yeah.
Like you start off and you're chopping all the vegetables, you're getting the size right, you're kind of getting everything ready, you have all the ingredients in front of you. But the cooking is the point when you're like, more spice or less? Ooh, too much spice. Okay, let's put more water in. Let's reduce the spice a little bit. You know? I love being on the mixing stage. Among my favorite parts of the project is the music spotting, where for Breaking Bad, for example, Better Call Saul, and now this new project, they are incredibly long sessions. So we might start at 9 a.m. We will end at 2 for a 1-hour episode. Wow. That means we're going scene by scene. We're doing it with the editor. We're doing it with the writer, frequently, and producer. We're doing it with the sound designer, with the composer, with the music editor, with the post-production producer. A whole team. Everybody involved is there. And all of us are weighing in when there should be music. And sometimes it might be a moment where it'll be a score moment, and I might think, I could maybe pull some songs for this as well. And then Vince might say, oh, I think this is a score moment. Let's let Dave handle this one. That makes sense. Or it might be a situation where, like, I know that silence would be better, and that maybe if we just don't have music here, we make it more empty. Because really what you're doing is you're painting with dialogue, you're painting, and this is the key information, right? Sound design, the sound effects and Foley and all those subtle things, music and silence. And figuring out which part is the strongest, which one is the lead character, is very important in the spotting session and very important in the mix. A lot of times, music will be played and it's actually intrusive. Or a choice that we made, now that we have all the sound design in the room, we realize, God, that fan that's playing in the background is kind of wonderful, and it's doing better storytelling really than the music. So I am frequently an advocate of bringing the music down, because in my mind it should always be helping story. How do we most sensitively impact the story? Sometimes that's by bringing the music up. Sometimes it's also by EQing it differently. That's a very key thing to me. Like if you're in a restaurant, could be speakers right above your head, and then it really is prominent, and that can be great if you're trying to create a reaction, right? You over notice the music. It's like, okay, we're now in a hip neighborhood and we have a square person, and part of their experience is being alienated, and having some very hip poppy song that's so loud you can barely have a conversation makes it difficult for them to engage and to connect. That can be really helpful. So I might ask to have the speakers right above. We don't see them, but we have a sense of where they are. Or it might be like, I want a car go by, and I want that car by to give a little accent. It's like, okay, here's the moment the car goes by, and we can see in distance in the frame there's a car going past. What if we put a loud thump in there? And that becomes now an accent moment. It's an opportunity for music to change the dynamics of the scene. Yeah. It's like, it's a romantic scene, but there's a pause. And as that pause goes by, a car goes by. You don't even notice it, but you hear it. And you suddenly realize, wow, their moment's gone. Like they had a moment, but there was a pause. And that pause was somebody not engaging, And that song shifted everything. And it wasn't the song, doesn't even matter what the genre is, but that moment is marked with music. And now the world is different. Now that person's leaving that restaurant knowing that the person that they love the most won't probably ever talk to them again. And all it was a car going by playing some reggaeton. You know, it's just the ability to find those opportunities. And in the mixing stage, you can really figure out how to do it in a subtle, graceful way where you feel it but don't think about it.
Yeah, the way the reason why I'm asking this is because it's such an intuitive thing and something that you cannot plan ahead. It's something, for example, like a tempo of the film or a series. Once you're finished editing, then you have to make a pause for a couple of days, and then you come back to it with fresh eyes.
Yes.
And then you look at it from beginning to the end, and then you see, oh, this scene needs to breathe a little bit more.
Yeah.
This is too long. Cut it short.
We're over cranking here.
We're cranking here. Yeah, stuff like that. And then you see, when you see this whole thing as a whole, you see where you need less, where you need more, what you need to change.
Yep.
And then now you've been telling about this sound design and music and the storytelling. Two films came to mind. One is Christopher Nolan's Tenet, the way the inaudible dialogues completely throughout the film, you struggle to understand dialogues, and then you realize he did it on purpose.
Right.
And for example, the second one is The Sound of Metal.
Oh yeah,
The Sound of Metal.
Great
The guy is going deaf, but he's a metal drummer, noise metal drummer at the same time. And those are the moments when you see like the way the sound plays a part in this whole film. Like it's a huge, important, in your face, upfront element of the storytelling,
and very strategic. You know? Like I think what you described earlier is to me a little bit like sequencing an album.
Yeah.
When I think about the albums I love the most, a lot of times I love the sequencing. I love the choice of how the journey goes. Typical pop record, you put the singles up front, you put the mid songs in the middle, and then the kind of, oh wait, we also have that song at the end, and most people won't go to the end, so who cares? I love the idea that it's a beginning, middle, and an end. I want that story to be really clear-cut. And if you listen to a Radiohead record, you know that they are absolute masters of crafting an emotional experience that is from beginning to end. And to me, a good episode of television, a good film, is having the same thing. You sequence it really well. And a lot of times, as you described really well, you don't know how to affect that until you've done your mix and you think you're done, and suddenly you realize, you know what, we have all these songs on the front end of it, and then it's quiet for a long time in the back, and the audience is feeling disengaged somehow. Maybe we pair out a little bit. That scene that had a big, song playing on the radio, maybe we don't need that. Maybe we have something playing off in the distance at the end, or maybe we put score at the second half of the film, and we really choose those music moments so you feel the emotional story really being told. That is sequencing, and in a lot of ways, it's subtle because it can be how the dialogue is. Sometimes the dialogue is very hard to catch. People are overlapping each other, and it's very naturalistic, but when you get to the end, it's now intimate. Yeah. So now it starts where you're barely keeping up with what's going on, and here you really see what's going on, and that's powerful storytelling.
You see, this is why I told you earlier, a while ago, this is the part of conversation we have to be careful because you see how a simple thing is not so simple anymore.
Yes, exactly. I hope we haven't exhausted our audience at this point.
Trust me, you're not. But we have reached the end of our conversation, and I just want to ask you, because we haven't mentioned it, I just realized you're not in Belgrade by coincidence.
No.
You were invited here to participate in a conference called the Runda All Around. So what are you going to do here?
I'm going to do a lecture about Better Call Saul, one of my favorite projects, and it's specifically about storytelling and the opportunities of using music to tell a story. Yeah. So one of the key parts of the character, when I first got hired on Better Call Saul, Vince had a really exciting way of describing what the premise of our series was. He said, what kind of problem do you have to have that becoming Saul Goodman is a solution? So I thought, all right, who is Saul Goodman? Saul Goodman is a fast-talking, flashy, incredibly gaudy lawyer who is willing to suggest killing off somebody in jail because it fixes a problem, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you become that kind of a monster, right? And I thought, well, that's really interesting. So to me, it was about heartbreak. How do you break the heart of somebody? And so the ingredients to me were how I can tell with music how that evolution happens. So when you get to the end of Better Call Saul and the beginning of Breaking Bad, it's a prequel. Do I understand now who that crazy, ridiculous comedy relief character is? And that was the story that we were telling. And so he begins presenting himself as a public defender. And we have, he loves movies. So we start with a whole wonderful sequence that's pulled from All That Jazz. And it's basically, it's showtime, folks. And then it's this beautiful piece of Vivaldi. Then we re-recorded that entire song using instruments that were actually tied to his sort of ethnic background. He's not Saul Goodman Jewish. He's actually Irish. And so in a way, it's another fake identity. So we thought, let's use Irish instrumentation. We'll use mandolin and banjo. And we gave it this earthy quality, and we re-recorded it, and we built it into this beautiful montage. That is one version of him. When he's doing, he's trying to make phone calls in order to be able to promote his law business. He basically creates these false news stories in order to kind of become famous. And we thought, well, who does he think he is? Well, he thinks that he's Dave Brubeck. He thinks that he's kind of like mainstream, but kind of classy jazz. But that's not really who he is. And so as we get to know him more, it gets funkier and dirtier and more interesting. So I think in a way, it's like, how do you tell a story of a presentation of a character and who the real character is? And music kind of tells that story throughout. So I'll be giving different examples of those sequences, giving some behind the scenes about how they were built, and also how did these all fit into this broader story of who is Saul Goodman and how is he a solution to a problem.
Thank you, man.
My pleasure.
Thank you, man. This was a beautiful interview. Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank
Cheers.
You. Stigli smo do kraja. Ćao.
Vidimo se.
Hmm.